This is the regular council meeting for May 17th, 2022. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is not present. Councilmember Friedman?
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon?
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez?
Present.
Councilmember Jordan? And Mayor Rose.
Here. And we have an item to read.
Item 1, National Public Works Week, May 15th through 21st, 2022.
Very good. This is National Public Works Week. Please bear with me. I left my glasses in my office, so this might be a challenge. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure facilities in service of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the residents of the city of Santa Barbara, and whereas this year's National Public Works Week theme is Ready and Resilient, showcasing public works professionals as diverse, hardworking group of dedicated first responders, including engineers, project managers, planners, maintenance workers, mechanics, technicians, and operators, ready at a moment's notice to keep our community strong by maintaining, rebuilding, improving, and protecting our city's streets, creeks, ocean, public buildings, and other facilities essential for the public health and sustainability of Santa Barbara. And whereas Public Works is resolved to preserve and improve services initiated by prior generations, with over $335 million worth of projects underway, including monumental efforts such as completing 13 years of construction for the 20-plus year Lower Mission Creek Flood Control Project, the Las Positas and Modoc multi-use path project, and much more. And whereas Public Works essential field staff, as a critical city resource, provides vital services to the community every day by ensuring safe drinking water, reliable wastewater treatment to protect the public and environment, prompt expert service of emergency vehicles, and safe and clean public streets and sidewalks. And whereas the Public Works mission is to provide our community with a sustainable foundation to thrive by delivering quality services and public infrastructure throughout efficient and fiscally responsible practices. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, California, do hereby proclaim May 15th through 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week and call upon all citizens and civic organizations to recognize the importance of providing our public works and to recognize the contributions made daily to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Mr. Director.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. I'm Cliff Maurer, Director of Public Works, but the real stars of the show are to my right. Receiving the proclamation on behalf of the Public Works Department are Andre Ritchie and Tyler Medeiros. Just tell you real quick about them. Andre is a native of Santa Barbara, graduate of Santa Barbara High School. He's got a son who's a senior at Santa Barbara High School, who's also a member of the Public Works team working in the downtown parking. Andre's been working with us for 23 years and has seen quite a transformation. Absolutely loves everything he does. They're both members of our tremendous in-house paving team as our roads are transformed. As our roads are transformed here in Santa Barbara, these are the guys that are doing it. Tyler, the former U.S. Marine, hoorah, and he's been in the Santa Barbara area for about 20 years or so. Owned a gym and operated a gym here. He's been with the Public Works team for the past 4 years. And as I was talking with Andre earlier today, they have their equipment outside and we really owe it to the council for providing them with the great tools, because with those tools, just turn them loose and they do just tremendous work for the city. And what I was discussing with Andre is that, you know, there's a lot of technical and skill involved with paving. And I've been involved in public works on and off for 40 years. There's a lot of art involved too. And I am really impressed with our team here because they are artisans. The work they're doing on behalf of the city with the resources that council provides us is tremendous. And it's really transformational. So thank you very much for all you do for us.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Ms. Bjork, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor Ross.
Okay, very good. We have public comment, 3 minutes per member of the public. You know, any issue that is before the, that can come before the council as part of our purview. First up would be Aaron Ashland.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and City Council. I was looking online and it looked like there was some budget issues or some budgets coming up for the City Attorney's Office, and I wanted to address some of the concerns that I have. I want to be clear that this isn't personal. I don't know any of the people that I'm going to speak of personally, but I want to speak more to the job I think they've been doing for the city. First, and I thought if there was any money left over, you could give it to the other employees of the city that are looking to get more pay and stuff like that, because I think there's a couple people in the city attorney's office that maybe shouldn't be working for the city any longer. One is Mr. Dan Hensky. I think I've talked at least some length as to my issues with him. I think he's driven a wedge between the business owners and the city, which I think is wrong. I don't think he wrote a good ordinance. I don't see any other cities that have restaurants that go half of a mile long in their patios, but I believe he was a part of that. And then the thing that I said to you guys before, which is he came down to my patio and he said to my face that he basically thought I was stupid and that he didn't need to talk to me and that he knew about my business that I didn't. And so I took particular offense to that. I still do. I'm still angry about it. He cost me tens of thousands of dollars. But that's not really the point. I don't think that someone should be working for the city that doesn't represent the people of the city. And so when they went out and decided they had to do this 20-foot thing, I totally understand, like, that's a legal thing. It might have to happen to keep people safe. But to not give the businesses any heads up, I had ordered heaters that arrived about 2 weeks before I lost the patio. So I was $2,000 in the wrong direction because of supply chain issues. And then I had half of as much of a patio to try and make that money back. So it really was just a problem for me. It's still a problem for me. I don't think anyone like that thinks that they're smarter than everyone else, that they're supposed to be representing, should work for a city. He can go start his own firm somewhere, but he shouldn't be working for the people, and that's really what it comes down to. My second issue is with Mr. Way. I'm being prosecuted for about 6 inches. So in front of my restaurant, there's 28 feet, not 20 feet, but 28 feet of emergency access, and I believe one of my kegs is about 6 inches, about my foot width into the, maybe the right-of-way, it might be. But my problem is that, because I guess you could really have a problem with that if you were Mr. Way, but my issue is that the public market has only 14 feet of clearance outside of their patio, so I'm being prosecuted criminally for 6 inches, but they have 6 feet. So I think my attorney said Mr. Way at one point was up in arms about the fact that I hadn't moved 6 inches. Or my keg. So my thing is that what exactly would Mr. Way be up in arms about? I don't believe he's from Santa Barbara. I don't think he has a business here. I'm not sure. I believe he was like a homeless guru that we brought up from LA a couple years back. But now he's really coming after me and my business, and I don't think it's fair because someone else has got way less than 28 feet, and I have 28 feet in front of my business. So I'm not sure he should be part of the city's.
You need to wrap up, please.
No problem. I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right, Zach Smith is the next speaker.
Hello. Hello, Mayor and City Council. I'm Zach Smith, Chapter Chair for the General Unit. I'm here for Public Works Week. Happy Public Works Week. Unfortunately, I'm here to remind everyone that your Public Works General Unit employees, including crews in streets, facilities, fleet, engineering, and Public Works administration, are all out of contract. At this year's State of the City address, the City of Goleta projected realistic 7% sales tax growth versus the 4% that this city is projecting. This is a stark difference and shows that city projections are too conservative, selling the city short when it needs to prioritize its workforce. Today, you will receive a report that we're expecting a $7 million surplus for fiscal year 2022. A quote from the staff report reads, "Department revenues are projected to be higher by $10 million compared to the revised budget. Year after year, management projects deficits that turn into surpluses. As we sit on mountains of cash, our workforce struggles to survive, we lose valuable employees, and public services decline as a result. Rather than address staff retention issues with competitive wages, the city has pushed towards privatization and contracted work. This will only increase costs, lower the quality of services, and ship money out of the community to private corporations. With news of yet another surplus, I urge you to revisit how you value your workforce. As things stand, morale will not improve. Further turnover will happen, and our wages again won't keep up with our cost of living. Soon, you will have the opportunity to vote on what to allocate to your general unit staff. Please vote to expand management's parameters. Public Works Week should include fair wages, guaranteed health care, secure housing, and a fair contract. Happy Public Works Week to the hardworking Public Works employees who are currently working out of contract. You deserve better. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody online for public speaking?
Mr. Mayor, no raised hands for public comment.
All right, very good. We will move to the consent calendar. Do you have some items to read?
Yes. Item 2, adoption of an ordinance for assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 27073 from Waterfront Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Deminy, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the waterfront director to execute, subject to approval as to form by the city attorney, the consent to assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 27073 from Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Deminy, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 4, adoption of an ordinance for assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 23328 from Waterfront Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Deminy, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the waterfront director to execute subject to approval as to form by the city attorney, the consent to assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 23328 from Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Deminy, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 5, adoption of resolution regarding acceptance of grant from California State Library for English as a Second Language literacy services. Recommendation that council A, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 21045, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2022 for $46,543. And item 6, adoption of resolutions in support of the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project, West Side and Lower West Active Transportation Plan Implementation Project, and Milpas Street Pedestrian Safety Enhancements Project, and leveraging grant match funds. Recommendation that Council A adopt the following grant matches: 1, 20%, $6.8 million for the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project; 2, 10%, $2.2 million for the West Side and Lower West Active Transportation Plan Implementation Project; and 3, 20%, $1.992 million for the Milpas Street Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Project, and adopt by reading of title only the following resolutions in preparation for active transportation program grant applications. B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara supporting the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project, and to direct staff to apply for a grant to fund design, environmental review, and construction. C, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara supporting the West Side and Lower West Active Transportation Plan Implementation Project, and direct staff to apply for a grant to fund design, environmental review, and construction. And a D, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara supporting the Milpas Street Pedestrian Safety Enhancements Project, and to direct staff to apply for a grant to fund design, environmental review, and construction.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a request to pull item 11. Are there other items that council would like to pull for the consent calendar? Mr. Gutierrez.
Well, item 6, please.
Item 6, which we have read. And would you then also read then, Madam Clerk, item 11?
Item 11, request from Our Mesa Neighborhood Incorporated to name a median island on the 1800 block of Cliff Drive.
Very good. Mr. Gutierrez, item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have a question for Public Works as to why only 20% was allocated for the west side compared to the Mesa.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Councilmember Gutierrez. Yes, actually, the west side, only 10% was allocated. 20% was allocated for the Cliff Drive project on the Mesa, and 20% for the Milpa Street project. And this is really due to a balancing of resources. With the staff we have available, should these grants be all awarded, we wouldn't be able to have the staff to actually carry them out. So strategically, the Cliff Drive grant was the most competitive in ATP Cycle 5. Unfortunately, and there's extra money available in the state that may be allocated, that we can get that, but we won't know that until this grant application closes. So since that was the highest priority to complete a project, that got the full 20%, which is a significant increase in matching than previous grants because they've become so competitive. Santa Barbara has enjoyed great success in this area in the past. Other cities have upped their game, and the competition for this grant money has become much more difficult. Therefore, the matching is higher. So we do have a project on the west side that's going to start construction late this summer or early in the fall. So from a priority standpoint, we didn't want to put the city in a position where we overextended ourselves. The same team that are administering these projects are also doing all the interim ops on State Street.
Okay, so you're saying that there's an opportunity for the west side to get additional funding, but it's not for sure?
There is an opportunity for additional funding, and we're not walking away from this just in ATP Cycle 6. We're not biting off more than we can chew. This will still be a priority, and as we apply for more grants next year, that project will be at the top of the list, depending on how we do with we still can get it in ATP 6. It's chances are slightly lower than the ones that have 20% matching.
Okay. So it was a stronger bet to allocate that funding to the Mesa than to the west side in order to be awarded the grant because of the need of the Mesa over the west side?
I wouldn't say over need. It's a balance of work and what our prior commitment was. The Cliff Drive project completes a section of active transportation that's being heavily used today, both on the west side. I mean, the need's there. We've demonstrated that. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of balancing our workload out.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan, you had requested for item 11, and we also have a couple of public speakers for that. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just gives me pleasure to introduce this. I've seen a couple of speakers wandering out there. I know everybody's interested in Mike Jordan factoids, but John and Claude moved to Santa Barbara in the early 80s, and our family moved back to Santa Barbara in the late 80s. And my grandparents' house was next door neighbors to John Gathercole and Claude Raffin. And couldn't have been better next door neighbors. They ran a property management and realty company that was right there on Cliff Drive across from the median that fronts Alcazar and Ichiban and the other restaurants there. And John was, in his later life, was very, well, I'm sure in his earlier life too, but was very active locally and regionally in the philanthropic gay community. A great guy just to have in the community for anything. And when he unfortunately passed away after retirement, seems that how it always happens, Claude generously went the last mile with a significant donation to improve the median out there on Cliff Drive. And it would seem only appropriate that we continue that acknowledgement of the improvements upon that median and Cliff Drive by allowing this designation to occur. And I'm sure, I see Ms. Jory out there, I'm sure she can talk more about the process for the median and the significance of the bequest and the memory of Mr. Gathercole for that median and the impact that it's had on that strip of the Mesa that actually began, I'll prompt Ms. Jory, a few years ago under her leadership of our Mesa neighborhood with wraps of the metal utility boxes with artwork, with the flags going up and down Mesa Lane, with a structured reestablishment of a Mesa Neighborhood Association and a Mesa Business Association. And all of these tend to point towards a community that is a community over the hill, and it just seems apt and appropriate to bestow this small little token of appreciation on somebody who played such a role in that particular part of the Mesa. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll bring up Dennis Johns as a public speaker. Sure, surely can. Ms. Jory, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mike. That was beautiful. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and esteemed council members. It's great to see you in person. I'm Terry Jory, former president of Omni, our Mesa neighborhood. Like Mike said, we are seeking approval to name the island at the 1800 block of Cliff Drive. I'll give you a quick backstory. I'll add on to what Mike said, and Dennis has the specifics if you have questions about the signage. The John Gathercole Heroes Island is to honor all of our local heroes who helped us through the unprecedented times during the pandemic, including but not limited to firefighters, doctors, nurses, grocery store and CVS and Rite Aid workers, restaurant essential workers, postal carriers, farm workers, all the essential workers who risked their health and came to work every day keeping neighbors safe and supplied with the necessities of life at a time when sheltering-in-place orders were intact. It's an important time in our history that we don't ever want to forget. And one of our board members got this idea after speaking to a firefighter and said, we can never let people forget. 5, 10 years down the line, we're going to forget. We're going to get back to our life as usual, and we're going to forget. So we got bids to beautify the island. If you recall, it was just a slab of concrete, although Alice did work 14 years with her own hands gardening that concrete with flowers and things. Our lowest bid was $35,000, and I thought, oh, how are we going to raise $35,000? That's going to take us years, our little neighborhood organization. It took us 2 months. 2 months. And not only was it just the Mesa community, it was the complete community reined in. Donations rained in from all over. We were able to raise that $35,000. Plus, we raised over $15,000. We noted that our highest donor could name the island, which was Claude Raffin, who Mike so generously introduced. He donated $15,000 to honor his longtime partner, John Gathergo. So we request that you name the island John Gathergo Heroes Island in honor of John and our local heroes. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Johns.
Thank you, City Council. In the interest of time, I'm just going to read a statement. Thank you in advance in the assumption that you vote to consent to the naming of the Jan Gathergo Heroes Island. In addition, I want to advise you that this 501c3 organization, grassroots organization, Omni, is in continuing to beautify and improve conditions on the Mesa with the following projects. These projects are all accomplished with private donations, which we hope will be met with the same consideration in the future. We have the Shoreline Park Torrey Gate renovation coming up. We have, as was stated, utility box artwork wraps along Cliff Drive. There's about 20 of them. We've done one. We plan to do 2 more this year. And we're working on a Mesa hiking trail, establishing a Mesa hiking trail, and there'll be many more projects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have somebody with their hand raised virtually. Is that for this item, or do we know?
Mr. Mayor, we do have a hand raised for a consent item, but we do not know if this is this item or another.
Okay, we'll go ahead and let that person speak.
Very good. This is going to be the caller with the last 4 digits, 6667. You can unmute yourself and go ahead. Go ahead.
This is for the next item.
Sir, which item are you calling to speak on? What topic?
It's for the next item, the Santa Barbara South Coast T-bid.
Very good, thank you. We'll call on you then.
Okay, we'll call you out. We'll keep you in mind. All right, very good. Does anybody need to vote on any items separately from the consent calendar, Mr. Gutierrez and Mr. Jordan?
I just also mention my thanks to Adam Hendel out of the Public Works Office for the great collaboration and work in getting not only where we are today with the memorial part of it, but the work that he did on the landscaping with the neighborhood groups. He's gone far and above what probably his normal work job would be to make sure this works for everybody. Thanks.
All right, very good. Then I will entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
So move.
Moved by Friedman,
Second.
second by Jordan. Madam Clerk, you call the roll.
Very good. This is a motion for the entirety of the consent calendar. Motion by Councilmember Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Jordan. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is not present. Councilmember Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon?
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
And Mayor Russ.
Aye. All right, very good. That concludes the consent calendar. We'll have a report from the Finance Committee. Mr. Friedman.
Today we heard the third quarter financials, and then we went over the budget recommendations for the Finance Committee of all the fees and adjustments, and forward those on to the full council for consideration as part of our budget deliberations.
Very good. Thank you. Report from the Ordinance Committee. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. We heard the final updates on the ordinance amending municipal code pertaining to animal control and unanimously sending that forward to council.
All right, very good. We'll go into the public hearings. Before I have a small announcement before that, we will be accepting, even though it's a continuation of an item on item 14, the housing element, we will accept limited public comment remotely. So if you want to get in line in the queue and raise your hand for item 14, we will accept those until we begin the item. And there'll be a limited amount of time, so it depends on how many speakers go in, but it may be a short per person if there's a lot of folks. So, would you read the next item, please, Madam Clerk?
Item 12, adoption of resolution and public hearing on renewal of the Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District and adoption of the revised management district plan recommendation C, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara declaring the results of majority protest proceedings and renewing the Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District.
Very good. Mr. Bodett.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, good afternoon. The item before you today is the Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District. We're speaking to the renewal of. This is the second public hearing regarding this item, so I have a condensed presentation for you today, as we had full presentation last time. So by way of background, the Santa Barbara TBID was formed by the Property and Business Improvement District Law of 1994. This allows for a special benefits assessment district to be formed in a specific geographic area. In this case, the map on the left illustrates the boundaries. They incorporate City of Glida, City of Santa Barbara, and the County of Santa Barbara. These agencies remit the assessment and then remit payment to a nonprofit to administer the special benefits. In this case, it is Visit Santa Barbara. So just a history on the renewal. The TBID was formed in 2011 with a 4-year term. In 2014, this was renewed for a 6-year term. In 2019, we made a little revision to it, and it had a new expiration date of 2024. That brings us to today, where we're looking for a 10-year term. If this is renewed today, then we would come back in June to modify the existing term. So what prompted the renewal? So this process was started by Visit Santa Barbara, giving us petitions with over 60% of the assessment value, which initiated the process. On March 29th, the resolution of intention was adopted by council. Notices were mailed out to the businesses. This included the public hearing dates, assessment details, and instructions on how to provide a written protest. On April 26th, we had our first public hearing. This allowed for public testimony. And then today we have our final public hearing. So the next step would be the modification after today would be the renewal and then the modification to the existing term. So this was, Visit Santa Barbara provided a letter requesting the modification, and a resolution of intention to modify was done on April 26th. Notices have already been mailed out to businesses, providing the public hearing date on June 28th, in which we'll do the actual modification. So that brings us to the recommendation provided for you today, and that's to adopt the revised 2022 Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District Management District Plan dated March 3rd, and as provided in your council agenda report. And adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara declaring the results of a majority protest proceedings and renewing the Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. Bodett. Are there questions from council? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if you've gotten in contact with some of the hotel owners from Upper State Street that have been having issues with TBID?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Gutierrez, yes, they submitted a letter today. We received it in the city clerk, and it's been filed. We do have Visit Santa Barbara here today that will be happy to speak to the letter and the contents itself, and as to what services are provided to them, and sort through that as you see fit.
Thanks.
Mr. Colon.
Let me try and frame that a little bit before we get into Visit Santa Barbara. So the basic question under the California Constitution is whether special benefit is provided to these properties. And special benefit in this context means, let me quote it for you. It means that a privilege granted directly to the people paying this assessment that is not provided to those that are not charged, and that does not exceed the reasonable costs of conferring that benefit. So as I've read Mr. Perry's correspondence, he's contending that the hotel and motel properties on Upper State Street do not benefit equally to some other properties within the business improvement district. The question before the council is really whether they receive special benefit, and I think there is evidence in the management district plan to support that. The council should know that should there be litigation under the Constitution, the city bears the benefit or bears the burden of proving that special benefit. So it's something we take very seriously when we're reviewing these management district plans. So with that as an introduction, I think it would be appropriate to hear from Visit Santa Barbara.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Jordan.
Just have a couple questions. One will be a follow-up for you, Mr. Klun, but Mr. Burdette, isn't today's hearing supposed to offer a return on the returns of yeses or nos also? And then we would move forward if there weren't enough nos?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan. So, correct. Today is the renewal of the district. It is a public hearing. It's confirming a majority protest doesn't exist. Is basically what today.
It doesn't.
It does. It does not exist at this time.
Okay.
A majority.
So that just goes without saying, since you didn't say it as part of the presentation, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Visit Santa Barbara submitted 60% to renew the district. So therefore, a majority didn't exist coming in today. We'd have to have a change in a 10% swing in that 60% in order to achieve that.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Klon, if I could just follow up on, I'm sure you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at, and you've probably already pulled up the state code. So, and this was just dumped on us today, so I want to help further frame whatever we're going to hear. On Mr. Perry's letter, about 2/3 of the way down, where it starts with a bolded pursuant to the Property and Business Improvement Law of 1984, it includes an underline in the second sentence there, which says requires, and references 36601A, which I can give you a copy of the entire reference there if you want, but 36601A does not mention requirement in any of its language. It is actually a declaration or declaratory statement as part of the state code regarding BIDs. Could you confirm that's true and maybe work me through that a little bit to make sure I understand that?
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, you are correct that the quote there is from a finding and declaration by the state legislature of state policy. I frankly doubt that even applies anywhere in Santa Barbara. It's referring to what we used to call in the redevelopment days blighted areas, and certainly Upper State Street is not blighted.
And that part of the state code, the A, is followed by like E, D, B through F that are more declarations of characteristics of application of a BID. They are not requirements of a BID. Is that true?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, yes.
Okay. And then last question. There's a section 36624 which talks about changes to proposed assessments, and I'll read this for you. That at the public hearing, the City Council may only make changes in, to, or from the boundaries of the proposed property and business improvement district that will exclude territory that will not benefit from the proposed improvements, et cetera. That to me actually calls out a finding that to not proceed and carve out a section of the existing T-bid would have to make a finding that nobody in that T-bid is benefiting from that T-bid. Does that sound right to you?
I wouldn't go quite that far. I would say it this way. I think the council has the authority, if it finds there is not special benefit for a part of the proposed district renewal, the council has the authority to then exclude that area.
Okay, but you'd have to find that the reason for the exclusion. It had to be clear.
I don't think it's directly a mandate that you can't exclude non-benefited areas.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. If there are no further questions, we'll go to public comment. First speaker is Kathy Janega Dykes, followed by Paul Bullock, and you'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Kathy Janega Dykes, and I'm president and CEO of Visit Santa Barbara. I have a few remarks. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have, but I'm here to ask you to adopt the resolution to approve our new management district plan. But I'm also here to thank you so much for the years of partnership that the city has really shown to our industry, and particularly in the last 2 years. We've shown that we've been able to really pull out of this and to the benefit of the community. I'm very confident that the plan that you have before you will deliver the services to the payer, that it will keep the lodging businesses competitive against other communities for years to come. And we are seeing fierce competition right now. But it's so important for us to continue to stabilize our businesses, sustain local jobs, and fund the public services through visitor-generated taxes. And as you're seeing, TOT right now is having we're seeing record-breaking levels. Thankfully, the plan before you also addresses previous concerns from the lodging industry. Most lodging businesses also have agreed that transitioning to this percent-based model will be more equitable than the current dollar per night model. And I'm especially grateful that the luxury hotels, and you'll hear from one of them in a minute, agreed to this arrangement, as their assessments will increase the most due to the methodology originally sought by the economy class hotels. And following a successful decade of the T-bid, a 10-year T-bid duration really offers the stable assessments that lead to predictable levels of service. I'm so encouraged, as referenced earlier, that we have received more than 60%. We actually had a few hotels that came in to lend their support following the end of the petition drive. And regardless of whether an individual business has supported or opposed the draft management plan, the Visit Santa Barbara pledges to seek the maximum benefit possible for every payer throughout our advertising, our public relations, research, and sales programs. I thank you for your ongoing support.
Thank you. I think Mr. Jordan has a question.
Push the button. As you heard Mr. Good afternoon. As you heard Mr. Kalan mention, there is a burden if this goes to litigation that the city has to show some type of evidentiary response that each of the participants in the district are receiving a benefit. And I would suspect you have such type of evidence, and could you chat a little bit about that today?
We can. Mayor Rouse, council member agenda. A few things. Our job ultimately is to promote the destination, is to generate demand for the destination, and so that all lodging facilities certainly benefit. And there really aren't any specific boundaries. And we purchase a lot of research. We did this prior to the pandemic, and frankly, this research really saved us during the pandemic so that we could specifically target the right customers that are willing to travel during the last 2 years. It's geolocation research, and it really summarizes the findings for overnight hotel trips that are observed across the entire T-bid, anywhere from Summerlin all the way up to Goleta. And then we also have subsets for those hotels that are located on Upper State Street. So in the previous public meeting, I showed you a couple of slides. As a point of reference, this data is supplied by NEAR, which is a national firm, and it's analyzed by our research company, Destination Analysts. And it filters for trips that are overnight for at least 8 hours, but less than 30 days. And each mobile device must be observed inside a hotel from 11 p.m. to 8 p.m. So very specific requirements as well, too. And just as a point of reference, too, residents are excluded from this, as well as commuters and students. So we were able to compare the visitor profile from those visitors staying at all hotels across the TBID compared to those that are located in the Upper State Street area. And what we've examined is the point of origin. Where did all of these visitors come in? As we took a look at both sides, there were very similar comparisons. Most came from Southern California, very specific areas. Also, equally important is really examining their behavior. So are these true visitors? Are they visiting our attractions and our restaurants? And in fact, we're able to see how, through cell phone usage, how people move around. And again, there were very similar findings when you compare all of the TBID hotels to those of the Upper State Street as well. Again, I think it would be very difficult to only market to those hotels that are located up to a certain area on State Street, and then the other hotels on, a few blocks up would be excluded. They would truly benefit from all of the marketing that we're doing as well, too. I will also add that this, I believe that the document we received represents 10%, 500 hotels of the 5,000 hotels that we also represent. And I'm sure you probably agree, it's very difficult. We're trying to develop the best plan for the good of our industry, the good of our community, and sometimes not everyone agrees with everything we're doing, but that's certainly our goal.
Mr. Friedman has a question, I believe, for you, Mr. Nagadix. Is that correct?
Yes. So, thank you, Mr. Nagadix. Most of it was answered by Councilmember Jordan, but one of the issues that has been brought up by the Upper State Street is that they don't receive the benefit, and I know that the data is there, but could you speak to some of the benefits that Visit Santa Barbara provides, whether it's the marketing and if there's any that kind of reaches up there, or your role in bringing enhanced the Southwest, your participation in that, those types of things, because what I'm trying to understand is that specific area and their claim that they're not receiving any benefit. And I know the metrics that you just said show that there is very similar between them, but can you speak to the benefits that?
Mayor Rouse, yes, Councilmember Friedman. Our marketing strategy is really divided into a number of different areas. The largest portion of our budget is focused on paid advertising, and this is where we're trying to reach the visitor that will stay overnight, multiple nights throughout the destination. One of the things that we're very fortunate in Santa Barbara is to be able to offer an array of lodging properties, anything from economy scale all the way up to luxury. So when a visitor is, for example, looking on Expedia or something else, if they're booking through a third party, I would argue that you can't book a hotel unless there is demand for the destination. So that guest is going to book at a destination that they have already heard about, we're familiar with, read stories about or whatever, and that's really our job. Another portion of our marketing is really public relations outreach, working with journalists really across the globe, inviting them here into the community so they write positive stories, again, generating demand for the destination. We also, now that international business is returning, we are focusing on bringing back international visitors that are looking for a wide variety of lodging properties too. portion of our business is also for group, bringing in conferences. And while those hotels do not have any meeting space, through compression, they would then also benefit once all of the larger properties that are filled with meetings, they would then benefit as well, too. So that kind of summarizes the focus of our organization.
Just one follow-up question, because you mentioned it kind of twice in your, so when you're marketing, you're looking at a whole range of scale for the luxury properties that are excess of 1,000 to more economies. So you're marketing to all of that. In the upper State Street area, as I understand it, is more on the economy side compared to, say, the waterfront. And so, but your marketing strategy includes all of those. And so I just wanted to, that's how you approach it. And then if you were to exclude those, it would be more difficult to continue that marketing strategy because you're losing some of the economies, or would you have to make changes or that type of things?
Councilmember Friedman, there are economy properties located throughout the city, so I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest that they would still benefit from everything that we're doing, but yet the other hotels are passing on the assessment to the guests. So they will still benefit from everything that we do in the area. I mean, essentially, we would have to exclude them from our website marketing. They would no longer be located on our website, which generates a significant amount of traffic and all of our other marketing programs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go to Paul Bullock, followed by Warren Nocon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Paul Bullock. I'm the general manager of the Eagle Inn, which is located in West Beach. I've been there for about 18 years, and I'm here to ask for you to vote yes for the new T-bid that we're proposing. Having the 2% equally over all the properties is a much more equitable way of going, and I know for me that this year in Santa Barbara has been much busier and rates are much higher, and I am attributing that to the work that VSB does. There's not every city in Santa Barbara, in California, that's doing as well as us, and a lot of it's because of them. So I fully approve, and I'm very excited to work with them, and I hope you guys will vote for that too. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Warren Nocon, please. Next, and followed by Tom Patton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Warren Nocon. I am the Managing Director at Hotel Californian. As Kathy mentioned earlier, I can speak on behalf of my particular luxury hotel, but would like to think that the other luxury hotel general managers think the same. We do have the greatest increase coming for our guests if you do vote yes, and I would like to say I'm in support of this, even with us getting the largest increase. When it comes to, there's a lot of question about whether or not everybody benefits from Visit Santa Barbara. I'm only lucky enough to have been here for about 4.5 years. Funny enough, in that time, we've gone through so many different things in this city and town and county that now I'm the most senior luxury general manager in town. Everybody else has left. However, I got to see Kathy and her team help us get through the Thomas fires and then the debris flow. And then we had one good year, and that's not good for a brand new hotel. And then we had a pandemic for the last 2 years. And I'm sure they brought you the data that this is one of the 5 of the top 17 markets in in California that's actually doing better than it has. So how anybody in the hospitality industry can say that they are not benefiting from the direct efforts of Visit Santa Barbara is beyond me. When we go to change our rates, and you just heard Paul say that rates are up across the board. Yes, they are up across the board. That means they're up for everybody. If you say that your rates are up, it's because everybody else's rates are up. So even if you choose not to partake in Visit Santa Barbara, you will get benefit because everybody else will be getting more demand and they will bring their rates up accordingly. It's like an HOA. We can say everybody pays in. You may choose not to use the pool or use the fitness center, but you're still getting the benefit. We can say, don't look at the pretty flowers, but you're still getting the benefit. It's very difficult to be able to say, this is Visit Santa Barbara, only market these particular hotels. Because the truth is, Visit Santa Barbara hardly markets hotels. Visit Santa Barbara markets a destination. Hotels are the byproduct. We receive the byproduct benefit of marketing the destination. When you see that Santa Barbara received Wine Region of the World this year, that had nothing to do with our hotels. People come to visit and stay in the hotels because Kathy and her team have marketed the destination. She's not saying, come stay at Hotel Californian. Yes, I wish she would. And I do say that there are times when there are certain awards that come across, through public relations and through marketing, that hotels are mentioned. But again, this is a destination marketing organization, not a hotel marketing organization, not a restaurant marketing organization. What they do is keep Santa Barbara in the public eye, and people stay at hotels as a result. And that's where the benefit for everybody lies. So I hope that you will vote for the adoption of this resolution. And we all, as always, thank you for your support of the hospitality industry.
Thank you. Tom Patton, please, followed by Lizzie Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and fellow city council members. I'm Tom Patton. I'm the managing partner of the Ramada by Santa Barbara in Nolita. I live in District 5. I'm also the current board chair of the California Hotel and Lodging Association, which is the largest hotel association in the United States. And I have to tell you that in all my meetings with that association, Kathy and her team in Visit Santa Barbara is the gold standard in the state. They look to her for what she has done down here and how she has driven rates and occupancy in our destination. And has been mentioned by a couple of other speakers, we are at the top as we came out of this recovery. When other destinations went dark, Kathy had the fortitude to go ahead and go full speed ahead with her marketing this destination and marketing our hotels. And we are reaping the benefits of that. The proposed model, as Paul Bullock said, is definitely the most equitable. I was one of the people that worked with Kathy initially back in 2009 for 2 years putting the initial T-bid together. And a lot of people had concerns of whether it would work, whether we would lose guests. Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. We've not only succeeded, but we've exceeded those expectations. So we've got a new model here. This is one that we've all been wanting from day one. It's the most equitable one. We're excited about launching this. We appreciate the private-public partnership that we've had with the city during all of these years. And as one of the other speakers said, for people to say that they're not benefiting from this district is ludicrous. Every property benefits. Every property sees that in their rate and occupancy. My property is in the county, mid-tier select service. And again, I'm seeing the benefit. Leisure business, group business, increased air service. It's a winner. So thank you for your support. Look forward to your continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Lizzie Rodriguez?
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. I'm Lizzie Rodriguez, and I'm speaking to you today as the Chief Operating Officer of the Santa Barbara Hotel Group. It's a family-owned business with 4 hotels in the community. We have the Best Western Plus Santa Barbara near Cottage Hospital and 3 small boutique properties in the West Beach area. The Inn by the Harbor has 42 guest rooms, the Brises Del Mar has 31, and the Lavender Inn has 23. I share these details with you because as small boutique independent hotels, we rely on Visit Santa Barbara to not only attract visitors to Santa Barbara, but also to highlight the areas where our properties are unique. We have always trusted the wisdom of Visit SB because they are savvy. They think well ahead of our competitors, and the proof is demonstrated every day. Several months ago, several of you attended the Tourism Summit, where industry leaders and data analysts praised the strategic marketing before, during, and after COVID, which has led to our current success. The myth that tourists flock to Santa Barbara without any help is a misnomer. With competitive markets like Laguna Beach, San Diego, Pismo, and Ventura, we are fortunate to have Visit Santa Barbara to continue to advance our community as one of the top travel destinations in Southern California. But we can't just rest on that. It takes work and strategy to get us there. As small boutique properties, we wholeheartedly support the new plan because we believe it's fair and wise. Increased destination marketing is important for smaller independent properties because business doesn't just walk in the door. We have to compete aggressively with other communities for our visitors. And because we trust Visit Santa Barbara and their industry engagement to keep programs efficient and effective for the next 10 years. As of 2 years ago, we had 5 properties. We had one in Upper State Street, the Best Western Plus Pepper Tree Inn, Midtown, and the beach area hotels. All 5 of our hotels benefited equally. In particular, the Best Western Plus and Upper State Street benefited through the international market and the tour bus market. So I think we want to consider that when we're hearing from other Upper State Street businesses that argue they're not receiving fair benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone online to speak?
Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker, and that's that phone caller.
I think that's Mr. Perry. Go ahead, very good.
Very good. And you may go ahead. And this is the phone number ending in 6667.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is Scott Perry. Mayor, City Council, appreciate the time. I think that the conversation regarding the legal requirement that this not be a general benefit to all of tourism is an important one. And this is why we're pretty much unanimous on Upper State Street of wanting to not participate further. I myself operate the Lemon Tree Inn, and I have I'm in my 30th year. And I've heard all the speakers, including Visit Santa Barbara. They all are unanimous that we are promoting a destination. And the rising tide rises all ships. But the problem is that the law requires us to receive a special benefit. And I have not seen where we're, excuse me, where we are receiving that special benefit. All tourism in Santa Barbara does benefit from Visit Santa Barbara's work. There's no doubt. They do good work. It's just that we do not receive that. We're not receiving business from it ourselves in room sales. So we're not getting a return on our investment for our assessment payments. I think that when you have so many properties all agree, it's very difficult to get many people to agree to we have 80% of people signed petitions wanting out. We have one property that we haven't got a response yet, but I feel they will also join. And we have one property that remains neutral because they also have a property at the tourist zone at the beach. And so they're remaining neutral for purpose of this. So I've been paying into the TBID for the last 11 years. I've sat on the TBID committee for a couple of years. And frankly, if we were receiving the benefit from it, we would be right there with the other luxury hotels, but we don't get the benefit. We know our business very well, and we know where it comes from, and it's not coming from Visit Santa Barbara. Also, we do have meeting space at our property. We don't get referrals for it. We don't get group business. We don't get tour buses. So I don't know where all this business goes, but Upper State Street, we certainly don't. The Pepper Tree property is also signed onto this because they do not receive benefit.
You need to wrap up, please.
Sorry?
You need to wrap up, please. Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically the legal argument that we do not receive a specific benefit as required by law. We're just getting a general benefit that the entire community receives from it. So that's the reason that we requesting to be taken out.
All right,
Appreciate
thank you.
your time.
Very good. Madam Clerk, are there further speakers online?
No, Mr. Mayor, no further speakers for this item.
Okay, very good. It's back to the council for comment. Anyone? Mr. Friedman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first, I do want to express my appreciation to Mr. Perry and the group on Upper State Street. As a council member who lives in that area, I know those hotels pretty well and just that area. But overall, I do understand the benefit and the specific benefit to hotels that the TBID provides, and especially to our community overall. And we are Santa Barbara. We're not the waterfront. We're one entity of Santa Barbara, in the South Coast in particular, from Summerlin up, where the TBID is. And I think when you look at what Visit Santa Barbara has done, it's hard to argue that there isn't a benefit that's received by the community, but in particular the hotel and lodging industry. Let me back up first. When the Thomas Fire and the debris flow happened, I remember that Ms. Janega Dykes and her team pivoted and brought Visit California down here and convinced Visit California to target their marketing for Santa Barbara and Sonoma, who had gone through a recent fire, and put that towards our two communities in particular, at a time when globally the world was seeing us as that we weren't open for business because all they saw was the debris flow and the fire. And so they put that marketing in place while we were still in the recovery mode. It was like February or March. It was within a month or two. And because of that planning ahead, when the summer came, we were able to capture a larger market share than if we had waited 4 or 5 months to do that. And the same thing occurred during the pandemic. And you look at, it was mentioned today that the numbers were one of the few, if the only, that our numbers have gone up. And it just doesn't happen if you're doing it on your own and we're all a bunch of individuals doing it. We're better together. And then the other component that's really important, and I think that there is a specific benefit, it does have to do in particular with the expansion of Southwest. They don't just come into an area, they have to do their numbers, and they have to know there's a demand for their services, whether it's from the community that lives here or those who are coming to visit here from other areas. And without the numbers and without the support and without all the marketing and all that went on behind the scenes, we wouldn't have Southwest here. Now, Visit Santa Barbara was a huge part of that, not the only, but they were a huge part of making that happen. But the other part that should go on, it should be unsaid, but I think it has to be said tonight, is that there's also an expectation from Southwest that we have to continue to do that, because they could pull out at any time in the future. Maybe not any time, but they could pull out if the numbers aren't there. And so by continuing the TBID and continuing the route that we're on, we're showing that commitment, and we're going to continue to brand our area and bring in that business. And what does that do? It drives up the rates of the hotels that we saw the previous item, which was the ADR is as high as it's ever been. So when you have the higher ADRs in the luxury, it drives up the ADRs in all the other ones as well. So there is a benefit, a direct benefit from that. Because if the Hotel California was at $400 a night instead of, I won't guess what it is, but I'll never be able to stay there and miss no comment. But if it's at $400 a night, then the other ones would have to go down accordingly. But when it's higher up, the others can bring up. So there is that benefit. So I just wanted to say I went through all that in my thought process, and I'll be supporting moving it forward today.
All right, very good. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that Mr. Friedman said. You know, to me, if we're worried about the next step on this, clearly one side of this says they're not getting a benefit but offers no evidence, and the other party that is doing the marketing is clearly offering evidence standing here right in front of us of the type of people who are staying in the rooms and what they're doing when they're here. Part of the letter we received today talks about they're referencing a very marginal increase on their existing TBID assessment in these type of properties, and they're referencing that it's an inappropriate time to do because they are precarious. I'm reminded, of course, that right now during these precarious times we're seeing record prices on hospitality properties across the city. There's probably half a dozen that have sold just in the last couple months, and we're seeing record ADRs, average daily rates, in all of our properties. These things don't happen by accident, and they're happening anywhere in the city. They're not just happening down on West Beach or the waterfront. They're happening up through the State Street corridor at the same time. So I too will be in support of the staff recommendations, and I can clearly make any evidentiary findings that have been shown either in the staff report or even when you read the state code. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Okay. Are there, if there's no other comments, I would entertain the motion.
So move the staff recommendation.
What are you moving? Is it staff recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, first Friedman, second by Jordan. Madam Clerk, would you make the roll call, please?
Very good. This is a motion by Jordan, seconded by Friedman for. Motion by Friedman, seconded by Jordan. To adopt the recommended actions. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Snedden.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is absent. Mayor Russ.
Aye. Very good. Motion carries. I have an announcement to make prior to Agenda 13 regarding Agenda Item 14. Once again, I know this is confusing, but because we're actually allowing some limited public comment on a continued item, very limited public comment, I'm also going to request out of fairness that those who spoke before at the last hearing not speak again and consider yourself heard. All right? So we'll go with a limited public comment when we get to Item 14. In the meantime, Madam Clerk, would you please read Agenda Item 13?
Yes. Item 13, adoption of resolutions of necessity to acquire by eminent domain real property necessary for the Della Viena Street Bridge Replacement Project. Recommendation of the council: A, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara pursuant to Code of Civil Procedure sections 1245.210 through 1245.270, declaring the public interest and necessity to acquire by eminent domain real property interest for the Della Viena Street Bridge Replacement Project, 2733 and 2735 Della Viena Street, APN 051-213-020, fee interest. And B, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara pursuant to Code of Civil Procedure sections 1245.210 through 1245.270, declaring the public interest and necessity to acquire by eminent domain real property interest for the Della Viena Street Bridge Replacement Project, 2726 and 2728 Della Viena Street, APN 051-220-015, fee interest.
Thank you. So this is a hearing for the De La Viena Street Bridge Replacement Project. The purpose of this hearing is to consider adopting resolutions of necessity for property acquisition by eminent domain legal proceedings. Notice of this hearing was provided to the owners of the subject properties as required by law. Copies of these notices are included as part of the agenda package. By letters dated May 11, 2022, the property owner's attorney, Glenn Block, objected to the adoption of the proposed resolutions and requested an opportunity to be heard at this meeting. Copies of those letters were distributed to City Council. Members are part of the official record of this meeting. The scope of this hearing is limited to matters related to the city's need to acquire the subject parcels. After hearing all the evidence presented today, the council must consider 4 findings under state law. A, first, does the public interest and necessity require the proposed project? B, second, is the proposed project planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury? C, third, the property described in the resolution necessary, is the property described in the resolution necessary for the proposed project? D, fourth, has either the offer required by section 7267.2 of the government code been made to the owner or owners of record, or has the offer not been made because the owner cannot be located with reasonable diligence? Earlier today, the council held a closed session relating to negotiation for acquisition of the real property involved in these proceedings. The council gave instructions to its negotiators, and no reportable action was taken. The amount of compensation to be paid for parcels is not before the council at this hearing, and the hearing is not intended to be the time or place for discussion of how much compensation is just under the law. The order of the hearing will be as followed. First, there will be a presentation from staff. After the staff presentation, the owner of each parcel or the representative will be allowed to make a presentation. There are 2 parcels that are subject to this hearing, so I would suggest that each parcel owner be given up to 10 minutes to comment, for a total of 20 minutes if needed. After the owner's presentation, the members of the public will have the opportunity to speak. Public speakers will be allowed 2 minutes each. I ask that my council colleagues hold any questions until after all speakers have concluded. Unless there are any questions, I believe we are ready for the staff presentation. Could you proceed, please?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. I'm Laura Yanez, Principal Engineer in the Streets Engineering section of Public Works. The item before you today is the hearing for the resolution of necessity for the Delavina Street Bridge Replacement Project. The purpose of the hearing is for the council to consider the adoption of the resolution of necessity, declaring the city's intention to acquire by eminent domain fee interest in 2 parcels necessary for the construction of the Delavina Street Bridge project. Notice of this hearing was mailed to the property owners as required by eminent domain law on April 27th, 2022. As read, the recommendation before you today includes the adoption of 2 resolutions, one for 2733 and 2735 Delavina Street, and the others for 2726 and 2728 Delavina Street. The matters to be determined by City Council today include the public interest and necessity to require the project. The project is planned and located to be compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The properties to be acquired are necessary for the project. And the city has made an offer to the owners of record required by the Government Code 7267.2. As described, the order of today's hearing includes a presentation followed by testimony of the property owners and/or tenants or their representatives, followed by public comment, and lastly, consideration of the staff recommended resolution of necessity.
All right, very good. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A couple more slides. The findings related to the project necessity include public interest and necessity for the project, and that the project is planned and located to be compatible with greatest public good and least private injury. The Delavina Street Bridge is located on Upper Delavina Street between Alamar Avenue and Vernon Road over Mission Creek. The bridge is over 100 years old, as it was built in 1916 and widened in 1926. The project includes a removal and replacement of the existing structurally deficient bridge with a new bridge standards. Caltrans inspects all of our bridges off the highway system across the state and in the city in accordance with National Bridge Inspection Standards, and designated that this bridge is structurally deficient because the deck and superstructure are in poor condition, and the evaluation determined that the existing bridge and its existing condition is not suitable for rehabilitation, given its state of disrepair, which requires a replacement. Replacing the bridge will require that we demolish 2 buildings which are actually attached and sitting on the bridge, as you can see on the south side here of the aerial image, and the removal of a 3rd building on the north side, which is within inches of our bridge foundations. The proposed project will include a new code-compliant bridge, sidewalk realignment, shortened pedestrian crossings, creek realignment and widening, habitat restoration, mitigation plantings, and stormwater treatment. The city has been working on this project since 2016, and it has gone through an extensive review and approval process, including structure type selection, approval of its location and its geometry. All of that was approved and reviewed by Caltrans in 2019. It also had to go through extensive environmental review. This project is primarily federally funded, so not only did it have to obtain CEQA clearance, but also NEPA. The project received NEPA's categorical exclusion in January 2020, followed by CEQA notice of exemption in May 2021. This project also went before the city's Architectural Board of Review and received project design approval in March of 2021. The 2 property acquisitions proposed with the project are necessary in order to complete the project. Again, the buildings at 2733 and 2735 Delavina Street are built directly on the structurally deficient bridge, and the entire property is needed for construction of the bridge. And the foundation of the building at 2726 and 2728 Delavina Street is built within inches of the bridge abutment. The entire property is also needed for construction of the bridge, the creek improvements, the habitat restoration, mitigation plantings, and stormwater treatment. Here you'll see a street view of the 2 properties we're discussing here today. On the left is Marty's Pizza and Delavina Liquor at 2733 and 2735 Delavina Street. This is the building that's built directly on the bridge. And across the street is Mache Salon and Yellowbird Music, which are within inches of the bridge. And those are at 2726 and 2728 Delavina Street. This is a plan view of the parcel, which is shown in pink on the right-hand side. Outlined in red, which might be a little difficult to see, is a structure which is sitting directly on the bridge. With the removal of the bridge will be the removal of the structure itself, and the remnant of the property is deemed to be an uneconomic remnant. Now to go over 2726 and 2728 Delavina Street, the area shown in pink is shows our proposed improvements, which require the acquisition of the entire property. As you can see, the project includes extensive creek work, which includes laying back the bank, as well as habitat restoration, mitigation plantings, and the required stormwater treatment area, which can only be done in this area given the limited amount of space in the project area. The project elements are essential and a requirement of the project. So now to go over a little bit of the acquisition process. The subject properties must be acquired by the city in accordance with applicable federal and state laws and guidelines for project costs to be reimbursed through the Highway Bridge Program. In addition, California requires compliance with Government Code Section 7260 and good faith negotiations. The city retained Hamler Jewell and Associates to assist the city with the property acquisitions of the real property interest for the project, including the assistance with good faith negotiations and relocation assistance obligations. The city made offers to both properties in early November 2021 based on a professional appraisal. The property owners at 2733 and 2735 Delavina Street have not obtained their own appraisal to date, And the property owner at 2726 and 2728 De La Vina Street has obtained their own appraisal, and it was provided to the city on May 10th. The city is currently evaluating that counter offer. The amount of compensation is not an issue at this hearing. The city made offers to buy the properties in a matter required by law, and the adoption of the resolution of necessity does not preclude the continued negotiation with the property owners. The relocation process with the tenants is also ongoing, and the city will continue to work with the property owners and tenants as required by law. Now, a little bit about our project schedule. In order to apply for construction funding this fall, our right-of-way certification is required by mid-September in order to meet the Highway Bridge Program schedule for funding. Funding requires a shovel-ready project, which includes all of the property acquisition needs. Shovel-ready means it's ready to go to construction. And the timing of that would be spring of 2023. Therefore, after completion of the hearing, we request that council adopt by affirmative vote of at least 5 council members, by reading of title only, a resolution declaring the public interest and necessity to acquire by eminent domain real property interest for 2733 and 2735 De La Vina Street for the De La Vina Street replacement project. And then a second resolution declaring the public interest and necessity to acquire by eminent domain real property interest for the De La Vina Street Bridge project and the properties at 2726, 2728 De La Vina Street. This concludes my presentation. Here with me today is City Attorney Dan Hinchke, Project Manager Eric Goodall, Interim City Engineer Ashley Hsu, as well as our Public Works Director Cliff Maurer.
All right, very good, thank you. Per our pre-described order of events, we'll go ahead and have the speakers from the owner side. We have a cumulative time of 20 minutes allowable. There's a timer on the dais as you get going, so you can divvy it up any way you'd like. And then we'll do I'm going to ask my colleagues to hold questions until after we're done with all this. You can identify yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Glenn Block. I'm with the law firm of California Eminent Domain Law Group. As the name says, we're eminent domain lawyers. We've been retained by both property owners affected by the proposed resolutions here today. I'll speak to each of the properties separately, although the issues related to both are very similar. First, with respect to 2726, 2728 De La Vina Street, this property is owned by the Howard family through various trusts. Today, Miss Cindy Howard is with us. I'm sure the mayor and the council are familiar with Miss Howard as a longtime resident and a property and business owner within the city. The Howard family, as the council surely knows, cares very deeply about this community and takes their stewardship of various properties and the businesses that operate within those properties very seriously. And they are concerned about how they are being treated through this process. While the law demands that property owners be treated in a certain way, when the government uses this awesome power that it has, the sovereign power of eminent domain, the power to take from private property owners their private property that they've made significant investments in, that they rely on for the health and well-being of their families. And so California law, consistent with federal law, provides certain protections. And those are to ensure that the property owner is treated fairly and due process is observed. In this situation, the city and city staff have not yet complied with their obligations under the law to treat the property owners this way. While this project has been planned for a long time, there really is no immediate urgency to move with this resolution and necessity. And so what we've requested generally is that the council take this matter off calendar and consider it at another time after the city has made or complied with its obligations under the law, particularly with respect to making every reasonable effort to negotiate the acquisition before taking this step. Now, the law requires that under the government code, the city make every reasonable effort to acquire property by negotiation rather than using the heavy-handed approach of litigation. And the reason we request that this matter be put over is so that the parties have the opportunity to do that without the specter, without the cost, expense, and really the threat of litigation over the negotiations. The idea is that the property owner has the opportunity to share its opinion of value and negotiate with the city, express its concerns about the project. And then, if there are differences that cannot be resolved, then of course the city has no choice but to move forward. This is not a question of whether this project is required or necessary, but it's a question of due process and observing the constitutional rights that are guaranteed to Ms. Howard and her family. First of all, while the city made an offer in late November of 2021, shortly thereafter, the city's representatives advised me, the property owner's representative, as well as the occupant's representative, that the project was delayed for at least a year. And so at that point, there's no reason for the property owners to take steps towards negotiations. If the project's put off for a year, why move forward? Property values change. We don't know what the circumstances are. In fact, there's uncertainty on whether or not the project would even move forward. Funding was an issue. Design had not been completed. And so the property owners wanted to take the time to proceed when necessary. A few months later, the city's representative contacted me and said, wait a minute, we were wrong, or things changed, and now we are ready to move forward, and so we want to go forward. Ms. Howard directed me at that time to work with an appraiser and begin the process to get their independent valuation opinion in order to engage in negotiations. Well, that takes time. It took the city's appraiser 3 months once he inspected the property to complete the appraisal. At least that much time should be afforded to the property owner. I don't know how familiar the council is with real estate at the end of 2021 and into 2022, but everyone's very, very busy. These are professionals who have a line of work set ahead of them, and they can't just, out of thin air, come up with a reasoned appraisal analysis. So, as staff noted, the appraisal was completed and provided to city staff last week. And so now, the Howard family is prepared to engage in negotiations. So what we are asking first is that the council put this over so that the parties have an opportunity to comply with those legal obligations to negotiate. Secondly, and maybe more fundamentally, this council is not prepared and does not have the information in front of us by which to make the required findings. In order to make those findings, this council needs to base it on substantial evidence. And so I'm going to focus on one of the four required findings, and that is that this property or the property interests are required for this project. Well, the city doesn't have completed design plans. The city has not provided any plans to the Howard family, despite requests from the beginning for copies of those plans. In fact, today, some of the renderings of the project were the first time I've ever seen those, or the Howard family has ever seen those renderings. But there's something very interesting about those renderings. The proposed resolution says that the entire subject property must be acquired permanently for this project. The buildings need to be removed in order to accommodate the construction of the project. But there's land left. And so there is not evidence before this council right now on which to base a determination that the permanent acquisition of the entire subject property is required for this project. That evidence is not before this council, and because of that, it cannot make the required findings and adopt the resolution of necessity. Potentially, temporary interest could be acquired, leaving the remainder parcel to the Howard family. Staff represented that it would be an uneconomic remnant. Well, that is a specific legal finding that must be made and must be based on evidence. Nowhere in the staff report is it referenced. There was no discussion of the analysis that was done, probably because no analysis was done, suggesting that an uneconomic remnant remains and the entire property should be required. So, Honorable Mayor and Council, I ask you to consider that there is no justification and no reason today to proceed in an expedited manner. The city should proceed judiciously, with due respect for its obligations under the law, and respectful of these longtime property owners, taxpayers, residents of the city of Santa Barbara. Thank you. I also represent the owners of 2735 Delavina Street. It's the Abdul Hai family. They also own Delavina Liquor. They also are longtime property owners and business owners in this neighborhood in Santa Barbara. This is an important business to the family. It was a significant investment. When they purchased the subject property, they made a significant investment, as did the Howard family, in improving the property and bringing it up to the city's standards. Similar to the Howard property, this business and property serves the residents of the city of Santa Barbara, the people that live here. There was a lot of discussion earlier today about the tourism industry and bringing people into the community. Well, this area and these properties serve the people who live here, the residents. And they're entitled to the same consideration. Similar to, as I just spoke, the same considerations apply. There has not been an opportunity to value the property. The appraiser is working on the appraisal, and we should be able to have that within the next few weeks to be able to engage in negotiations regarding the value of the property. The same considerations with respect to the question of whether the entire property is required on a permanent basis apply in that situation. And then there's the fundamental question, or a fundamental question, about a business owner and what they experience in a situation like this. It is not easy to find another place to go. This city has a very low vacancy rate, and finding a place to operate a liquor store, a high-volume liquor store such as Delavina Liquor, that has the same type of accessibility that this property has, that this business has, is very difficult. And so the council's decision to adopt a resolution of necessity to acquire this property means likely the permanent ending of De La Vina Liquor. And that's something that this council should take very seriously and again, move very judiciously with. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have regarding these two properties and the business owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Block. You have 7 minutes and 16 seconds left on this. We're going to go to public speaking, which includes Mr. Amspoker in a moment here. And once again, we're going to get the public speaking in, and then we're going to allow comments or questions from council. So, okay, so do you want to be part of this? You've got a speaker slip in. I know that was confusing. There's 7 minutes and 16 seconds left.
That's fine.
It's yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, members of the council. My name is Todd Amspoker. I'm an attorney at Price Postel in Parma here in town, and I also specialize in eminent domain matters, as Mr. Block does. I represent Andrea Rigel, who is the owner of Miche Salon. Miche is a tenant on the property, which is the subject of your proposed resolution of necessity, located at 2728 De La Vina. I wanted to make sure you understand what we understand will be the result if you adopt the resolution of necessity today. City will then hire an eminent domain attorney to sue my client and take her leasehold interest in the property and make her vacate the property. Your attorney, in due course, will file a motion for possession of the property, and will have to respond to that, again, in due course. Ms. Rigel operates a very successful hair salon at the property, and also a nail service as well. Andrea was born and raised in Santa Barbara. She has been in business for 15 years. She's built up a very profitable business. She has about 6 or 7 hairstylists. She has several others who work in the nail salon. She's a very hard worker. She loves her career and she loves her business. This is the ultimate local business, completely self-generated, and a significant employer of local workers. Andrea has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to construct a very beautiful business location at the property with top-of-the-line finishings and appliances, as you can imagine. This is a beautiful place to go to, and people like to be there, which is why she's so successful. These unique improvements can't just be picked up and plopped down at another location. If Miche Salon is forced to relocate, all of those existing improvements are going to be lost. There's absolutely no doubt about that. What's disappointing about today is the timing of this proposed resolution of necessity. Last year, I was advised by the city's consultant that there would be a delay in the project because of funding issues. I told Andrea that she probably wouldn't need to move for more than another year in reliance on that information. I believe that that would give her adequate time to look for another property. However, the city has apparently decided to move the project along instead, pay for the bridge work itself, and expects to be reimbursed with federal funds later. I'm not sure about the status of the funding of this project, because the staff report also says that the city needs right-of-way certification by September 15th of this year for funding deadlines. I'm very familiar with those funding deadlines, and they are routinely extended. So I don't understand the urgency at this point. It's not remotely possible that the city could have possession of my client's property by September 15th. My client has been diligently looking for other property to move. She understands that this project is going to happen at some point, but the timing is the issue here. She has been looking for other properties, and in fact, she did find another property in a good location just down the street on De La Vina Street.
She was in escrow on that property, but the seller of that property unilaterally canceled the deal, and the escrow fell through, and that property is no longer available. This just happened in the last few weeks. So Andrea has to start all over from scratch and find another property to which to locate her business. It's not remotely possible that this can happen within the time frame that staff is suggesting. Even under the law of eminent domain, it's not remotely possible that the court process would allow the city to have possession of this property by September 15th. My client can't possibly tie down another property, obtain all the bids that are necessary to retrofit that property, obtain city construction permits, and do the work by September 15th or any time early next year. It's simply not possible. We ask that you do the right thing by this local business owner and treat her fairly. Please give her adequate time to find another location. Then we will be able to figure out how much it's going to cost to move so that the city will be able to reimburse my client for all of her expenses. The city's outside right-of-way agent unfortunately told my client at one point that she was going to have to go into debt to finance her move. As you can expect, my client didn't appreciate that sentiment. My client is not going to go into debt to finance this move. It's my job to make sure that that doesn't happen. If my client's property is involuntarily going to be taken from her, she is entitled under the law to have this move paid for by the city, not by her. So along with Mr. Block, we ask that you not adopt the resolution of necessity today so that adequate time can be provided so that my client will be able to find a new location, tie it down in some way, figure out how much it's going to cost to move there, and accomplish that, so that at the same time, we can have an agreement with the city to pay for all the expenses that are going to be necessary for this move. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Amspoker. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers online waiting to speak at this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Then it goes back to council. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could staff just walk me through that determination of the economic value of the remaining part of the parcel? So how much, what's the square footage of the parcel right now? What's left that we're not using? How that plays into what would be then creek setback requirements, any other setback requirements, parking, anything that a redevelopment of the remaining part of the parcel would trigger.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Councilmember Jordan, I believe that staff was referring initially on the non-economic part. Do you, is it okay if I go over and approach the map? Will you be able to pick me up on the mic? Oh, can you? Ah, there we go. Okay. No, go back to the other slide. There we go, thanks. Thank you. Don't move too quickly. The parcel that was being referred to is that little finger of pink property that's immediately adjacent to Vernon Road, and is essentially part of the creek itself and the creek bed. That property, once the bridge is built, is not usable for any purpose other than creek bank and creek bed itself. And so although the bridge will not actually be built on it, it is immediately adjacent to Vernon Road and part of the creek. And that was the parcel that was being referred to with the comment about an uneconomic, the idea is you take the entire parcel when there may be an uneconomic remainder parcel that would be left over if you didn't take the entire parcel for the project. As you can see, the bridge itself is actually going to be located on the larger piece of that property. And it extends all the way down to where the bridge actually extends quite a ways down toward the little circles on the other side of the property.
So I'm trying to orient that to the next
Yeah.
The next slide.
Now, okay, this is the property on the south side of De La Vina, at the intersection of De La Vina and Vernon Road. And you can see that.
This is the Howard property?
No, this is the,
No,
this
so
is.
I think I'm
Yeah,
talking about the Howard property.
We'll get to the Howard property in
Okay.
just a second. But I wanted to show you that you'll notice that Vernon Road is being realigned. The current alignment has that funny, almost like a Y intersection at De La Vina. It'll be realigned into more of a T alignment. If we could have the next slide, please. This is the property that Mr. Block was referring to, that potentially there might be remaining uses for. You'll notice that the creek bank is, as part of this project, actually laid back to a 3-to-1 typical slope along that area. That was the creek realignment that Ms. Yunus was talking about. In addition, the red line on that property is the required setback under the city's ordinances for setback on the top of the creek, the undeveloped area.
Which one's the red line?
The dashed red line, can
Got
you
it.
point to it?
All
There
right.
you go.
Okay.
And then
So that's the required setback.
Yeah, the 25-foot
Got
setback
it.
line. On the, in that area between the top of the creek and the northeast corner of the property, that is all habitat restoration, and will be habitat restoration open space area as part of this project. And then, Ms. Yanis, could you show the area down at the lower area is required stormwater treatment area. And the reason that the entire parcel is needed is because of the need to create the habitat restoration for the work that it's in the creek as required by various permits necessary to alter the creek to build the bridge. So that's what we were talking, that was what was being talked about.
Let me see if I can simplify this.
Probably can.
Okay. I might have played in this world once upon a time. So the silhouettes are the buildings that are there right now, right?
Yes.
So they have a value. But the dotted line, and probably the creek, the creek wall right now is probably vertical, right?
I believe so.
Pretty much vertical.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay, not hard to believe. Okay, and so that would be, by our city ordinance, that would be our 3-to-1 step back, and then by ordinance, that dotted line would be our required setback from the top of bank where you couldn't build inside that area, right? I'm seeing
That's
nods
correct.
next to you. Okay, and so the remaining part of the parcel that would be available is that weird little triangle between the dotted line and the right two lines, right?
The area that's designated as habitat restoration, yes.
Well, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
right now what it's designated to me. And so the argument that's being made is that somehow that triangle with whatever the frontage is there in De La Vina, which is probably also not going to meet ordinance requirements for a commercial frontage, would be of some value if left. That's the argument that's being made?
As I understand what Mr. Block
Okay,
is saying,
thank-
yes.
So I'm clear. Thank you.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Henschke, I just have a question about timing based on what was brought up. So it says here that the right-of-way certification has to be done by mid-September, and we heard from the Lessees Council his contention that even if we undertake this process and it's eminent domain process and it's affected judicially, that right-of-way certification can't be completed by mid-September. So I'm wondering if you could comment on that, and if it's true, is this whole process moot in terms of the funding?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. What Mr. Amspoker said and what Mr. Block said about the timing is basically correct. We don't know if we would be able to get an order of possession prior to the drop-dead date in September. We also don't know if we've made an application for an order of possession, that would be sufficient to certify the right-of-way necessary for the shovel-ready project. Those are things that we haven't been able to, and we won't be able to determine unless they happen. And so I would have to say honestly, I understand what they're saying, and I'm not going to disagree with them. That being said, there is some of the concerns that were raised, for example, the tenant relocation. We understand that, and there are means by which you can accommodate the continuation of a tenancy even with an order of possession. So those have yet to be worked out. That's part of why staff's presentation indicated we would be continuing to work with the residents both on the issue of valuation and on the issue of relocation and mitigation of property impacts. We understand those.
Thank you, and thank you for your candor on that. I guess I would ask, recognizing certainly that every situation is different and past results can't be guaranteed in the future. In your experience, what do you think the likelihood is of getting that order by mid-September? I mean, have you seen it work that quickly before? Is it truly there's no predicting? I'm just trying to get a sense of sort of the situation.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, I have seen it happen before. Do I know whether it can happen in the current situation with the courts? I just don't know. There are statutory requirements that are required in order to do the order of possession. We, of course, would comply with all of those. One of the requirements is a 90-day notice of the hearing on the order of possession. And that's frankly one of the more significant delays that could occur. But without the resolution of necessity, we can't proceed. With the resolution of necessity, we can continue to negotiate. That's kind of where we are.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And then my last question, thank you, Mr. Mayor, is about this funding cycle. If you could just speak a little bit more about the importance of getting in this cycle. Is it primarily because the bridge is not structurally sound and we have, obviously we want to keep everyone safe and there's liability if we don't move forward with this project right now, or will we not get the funding a year from now? Can you kind of give me a little bit more color on that?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Harmon. Yeah, so the Highway Bridge Program has become very constrained. So funding is very limited per year, and so they prioritize funding projects based on their shovel-ready status. So the sooner we get there, the higher we become in the line to receive this funding. And we won't be put on the list to receive the funding unless we receive our right-of-way certification. They evaluate funding projects a couple times a year, and so if we meet this September 15 deadline for their fall evaluation, we could potentially be funded for spring 2023. They again reevaluate their list in March and kind of create a preliminary list for the following year. And so all of this process gears us up for getting in line for that funding.
Thank you. I guess just to follow up, my question is, maybe is it that there's a limited pool of money, and if we don't get in on this first round, there may be nothing left if we make it for the March review? What I'm trying to get at is, can we wait until the March review without putting at risk the opportunity to do this necessary project?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Mayor Rouse and Commissioner Harmon, the risk would be if we can't get in line for the funding until March, the construction window for these bridge projects usually starts in May and goes until October. So if we're not authorized for construction until March, there's no way we can even start construction until June. Typically, a contractor wouldn't want to even start work knowing that their creek window is so short. It would, if they started later in the creek window, it could make this from a 2-year construction project into a 3-year with larger impacts to the community, so it would likely delay the construction an entire year. As we know, construction costs, all costs are rising rapidly, so there's the increased cost to the project, as well as the need, because it is structurally deficient, it has a very low sufficiency rating. There's actually a hole in the underside of one of the bridges. There's a very imminent need to replace this bridge as soon as possible and not delay that if we can avoid it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So I just want to be sure that I'm clear on this. So portions of these properties are on the actual bridge deck itself, is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor Rouse. Councilmember Sneddon. So it's hard to see on this image, but the building is essentially outlined here in red, and the existing bridge is directly under the structure. So it's holding up, the bridge is holding up the structure. And as Mr. Goodall mentioned, if you go under the bridge, you can see into Marty's Pizza, given the
Thank you. And
degraded
how common is that for structures to be built on top of bridge decking?
Good question. That's very rare, although the city has now gone through this twice. So I don't know of another example, and I don't know if anyone here with me today can allude to another.
Unusual.
It's a very unusual circumstance, yes.
And who owns the bridge currently?
It's a city bridge.
Okay,
the
so it's
city owns the bridge.
the bridge is city-owned property. And then how was the ownership of the buildings obtained?
That's actually a very interesting historical issue. The city owns the bridge. There is a license for the businesses, but given the nature of what that license was, we determined that we would value the property to be acquired as if it were fee. And so, but once the bridge is removed, whether there's any continuing value, I'm frankly, based upon my research into the record and Mr. Thornburg's research into the record, I'm not sure exactly what the answer is.
Okay. And it was an independent outside agency that inspected the bridge and found it to be deficient. Could you explain that a little further?
Yeah, Commissioner Seddon, Caltrans inspects bridges on a biannual cycle. Each bridge gets inspected, they generate an inspection report based on their observations, and then produce that inspection report, provide it to whatever agency is responsible for ownership and maintenance of these bridges. This one in particular is a city-owned Caltrans inspected bridge. So they've informed us, they've given us numerous inspection reports from the start of design, as Laura said, which was in 2016 to now, and the sufficiency ratings have progressively degraded and the bridge has become structurally deficient.
Thank you. And then, I mean, I'm not sure I even want to open this up, but in broad terms, what would be our liability for continuing to have a structure on a known structurally deficient bridge with occupants in it?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, that's an interesting question that has a lot of facets that I'm not prepared to answer today.
But it's not straightforward.
It's not straightforward.
Okay. Thank you. And then, so I'm clear on the parts that are on the bridge. And then back to this figure. If the habitat restoration portion, is that required that it be that, or is that what we would hope it to be, or that's what would make it the most community beneficial, or is that in play? Could that be in play for further discussion?
Honorable Mayor and Commissioner Seddon, it's a bit of both, I would say. Part of that area will be required for tree replacements for the trees that have to be removed as part of the project, as well as creek restoration area. Creeks will also be expanding, not expanding, they'll be performing habitat restoration and using that as open space as what we've seen as the best use of that remaining element once you take into account the required habitat and plantings that are required per the permits for the project.
Okay, but it could potentially be, I don't want to say negotiated, but it could potentially not be used for that.
We could look at the plantings and potentially there may be a sliver that's left that we would say, here's the plantings and this sliver we don't need to plant there because we've met our mitigation requirements through this other section.
And then the resolution today, though, would be saying that entire section as it's currently laid out.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, the resolution is for the acquisition of the entire, of this entire parcel, the resolution with regard to this property, and it doesn't bifurcate out any portions that would be not subject to the resolution to acquire the entire property. I suppose if during negotiations, if we were going to negotiate, if there was a voluntary transfer of the property at a later time without, as a resolution of this matter, that could be something that could be open to discussion with the property owners. But at this point, staff's recommendation is that the entire property be acquired. The other thing is that there's some other inadequacies about the site. The driveway's too small for the area and those kinds of things. So it's not an easy site to create an economic use of once we remove the buildings in order to construct the bridge and once we do the project. It's a very troublesome site because of existing constraints. At least that's staff's opinion. The property owner may have a different point of view.
Okay, so if we were to make this resolution today, that piece could still be discussed with the property owners until a resolution is reached?
The answer is we could settle with the property owner that would allow some remainder of the property, but that's not the staff's recommendation today, and we continue to believe that the entire property is necessary, which is why that entire property is included in the resolution necessity and is what the acquisition that was appraised was the entire property along with relocation and the fixtures and all those kinds of things that would be compensated for. Just one thing I'd like to add is the public agency is required to pay just compensation for all losses suffered by the property owner when you take the property. And so that's not something that we can avoid. We might disagree, and there's a process for resolution of the disagreement, but right now, we're still in the negotiating phase.
Okay. And then some of the businesses have found relocation locations, and some have not. And these in question mentioned today are on the actual bridge decking or are not?
I know. Yeah, I know. Yep. Mayor Rouse, Council Member Sneddon. The status of the relocations is that Yellowbird Music has found a place, has signed a lease, and will be relocating to that location possibly in August, as soon as August. And as Mr. Glenn Block mentioned, Miche Salon is actively looking. They were working on a place which fell through. And then across the street, with the structure on the bridge, Marty's Pizza has decided to retire and go out of business sometime between now and the construction of the project. And Della Vina Liquor is actively looking and working with our consultant to find another location.
Thank you. And those are the 4 businesses that are on the actual bridge decking?
Those are all there's Yellowbird Music and Miche Salon are in the picture, or located at the site on the screen currently. And then Marty's Pizza and Della Vina Liquor are at this location across the street.
Okay. So I'm concerned about the ones that are on the actual bridge decking, which is,
So that would be the pizza parlor and the liquor store.
and not the Miche,
No, Miche is across the street.
and is not on the actual bridge deck.
It is within inches of the bridge foundation, the building itself.
Okay. Okay.
But it is the business closest to the bridge.
Thank you, that answers that. And I just have one more question about straightening off the T as opposed to keeping it at an angle. Is that a requirement of the project, or is that, talk to me about the necessity of that. Like, is that negotiable?
So the realignment of the intersection was a recommendation and requirement in order to make the intersection safer. Our city traffic engineer analyzed the intersection and determined that by making the proposed improvements, we'll be able to reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians, as well as clearing up sight lines and making it a more straight path of travel for pedestrians in the area.
And that being straight or angled, does that impact at all which properties might be? Okay, thank you, that answers that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarifying questions. So on the right-of-way certification is the September 15th date. And so at that point, there's still a whole process to go through. So from what I heard is the tenant there is a path to allow them to continue to occupy that past September 15th, should everything go forward, and to help them get that extra time they need. So they wouldn't be out on September 15th.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, yes, we'd request that there's a process through Caltrans that we can go through in order to accommodate that request.
And then I just want to make sure I understand the timeline. So September 15th comes, we go through the process, and say we get awarded. So if we went through this process, got the grant, or received the grant, then when would we expect construction to go forward?
Councilmember Friedman, if we receive the right-of-way certification, we'd be notified whether we receive the construction funding sometime in early November, which would allow us to bid the project towards the end of the year, early 2023, and then start construction as soon as our permits allow, which is typically towards early to mid-May.
And it's a multi-year project, so you would go through that construction period, and then you can't construct in the winter, and then come back the following summer, so that would be summer of '24.
That's correct. So in order to allow the businesses and continued vehicle use, we would phase a project in order to construct half of the bridge first, maintain De La Vina Street open, and then switch sides and construct the other side.
So there would be, so that window from September 15th would be somewhere into the, could potentially go into the early '23 to get that extra extension for the business. From September, we'd have that extra window. It's a few months. There would be a few additional months possibly going in there, because we wouldn't be ready to go to construction until May.
That's correct. We'd have to, again, go through Caltrans and determine what the timing of that relocation, what's the drop dead date, and what the process, outline the process to request that.
And then if we said it's going to be tight, we don't know if even if we went forward today, if we do go forward, that we don't know about this funding. And as Dan said, we won't know until we know and go through the process. But if we decide not to move forward today, that severely would hamper our ability to meet this timeline. So the next timeline would be to resubmit in the spring.
Councilmember Friedman, Caltrans would reevaluate their funding priorities. Again, in order to make that list, we'd have to have the right-of-way certified sometime between now and then. So this process should still move forward in order to either meet the first review or the subsequent. But the sooner we obtain a right-of-way certification, the sooner we get on the funding list for construction funding.
So even if we delay today, it would still need to go forward pretty quickly, because we're saying now's not enough time to do it, but even if we delayed, we'd still run up against a quick timeline. But we would miss this first year window to even move forward and continue to have a bridge with a hole in it. So, okay, thank you.
And if I could add to that response from Ms. Yanez, we have historically gotten whatever funding we've applied for these bridges. It is programmed, and Caltrans programming for the bridges for both the construction funds and the right-of-way funds that are necessary for these acquisitions. So the funds are there. It's just a matter of having our ducks in a row with our certification. And if there is a delay past September, there are still mechanisms through Caltrans to have your certification even in December and have the authority to move forward into construction and not miss our construction timeline.
Are those typical, or are those exemptions that would do that? Is it a typical process that they do that, or is the process we're trying to go through now to meet by September 15th the typical process?
September 15th is ideal. It's just ideal in the system. The typical process today, with how impacted the Highway Bridge Program is, all the agencies, LA, San Francisco, the larger jurisdictions, they are actually advancing funding all of their bridges and building the bridge itself and then getting reimbursed years later, just carrying that cost forward. So Caltrans is very used to this. It used to be more of a rarity, now it's the norm.
Okay. So we are competing with other jurisdictions, and the competition's getting more fierce every day. So.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, we'll go to deliberations and potentially an action. Mr. Block, you actually have a couple minutes left if you'd like to make a comment.
I appreciate it. I just want to clarify a couple of things. First of all, with respect to the uneconomic remnants and some of the other design and engineering questions, the issue that we're raising on behalf of the property owners is a matter of due process. And the depictions, the exhibits that have been shown today have not been provided to us. So we are not making a substantive argument that there is an economic remnant that the city should be discussing with the property owners. It's a due process question. And we have not been afforded the opportunity to review the design plans to present an argument or analyze the substantive question of whether or not it's an uneconomic remnant. And then I would further state that staff's comments today are not really substantive evidence. They have not presented a detailed analysis. They don't have finalized construction plans or things like that upon which this council could make the requisite findings. The second thing, I want to be clear on what we're requesting here today. Our request is that this matter be put over, not that it cease. And so, as staff has indicated now, there isn't a urgency, a 30-day continuance or pushing this off for 30 days, certainly with respect to the Howard property where we've presented the appraisal, would afford the parties the opportunity, as the law requires, the city is obligated to proceed with negotiations. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Mr. Henschke, would you care to respond?
Thank you, all Mayor and members of the City Council. First of all, with regard to due process, we don't believe that's a meritorious argument. We have provided 65% plans to Mr. Block, and these slides were provided to Mr. Block in advance of the hearing. They were provided to him last week. With regard to the other issues, I don't have a response to those. We've made our recommendation. Our recommendation is to move forward today. We believe that you have substantial evidence and sufficient evidence on which to move forward.
All right, very good, thank you. With that, now we're back to council for deliberations and/or, do we have, I don't think we have public comment, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, as I thought, and there's none here, so.
Honorable Mayor, can we get the slide with the findings back up?
Okay, if you would, please.
Honorable Mayor, while that's being done, I will just point out that the findings themselves are detailed in the resolution with all the evidentiary basis for those findings. And so the findings are contained in the resolutions themselves.
All right, very good. Deliberative comments by council. I have Mr. Jordan and then Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think some of you did, but I got to sit through the other one, which was down at the base of Mission Creek, and those two were actually built out over the creek underneath them. And I acknowledge that this is not a pleasant process. It remedies mistakes of the past for the betterment of the future and the entire community. I tend to believe that we're honestly going to treat you well in this process, and in that vein, I'm ready to move forward. I can make all of those findings. I can endorse and support staff's two recommendations on the sets of parcels and move forward. I guess from the vantage of what I've learned in closed sessions prior to this, I think we would be irresponsible not to position ourselves accordingly that helps both us and you move towards remedy that you feel would be most beneficial to you. And not taking this step today would not put us in a position where we're able to remedy this problem in a way that serves the entire community. I don't think this is the end of the process. It just continues the process on. I'm respectful both of staff's assertion that they will deal with you fairly. I'm respectful of your position that you will treat us fairly, and so I'm supportive of the recommendations today.
Very good. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. So eminent domain is never an ideal situation to be in. In this case, I think there are, for both the city and our responsibility as well as the property owners, there is an obligation for the greater public to address the bridge. The fact that it has a hole in it, and we know that it is not adequate and it's been rated that way. Both parties have an obligation to move forward, and we can still continue the process to work with the property owner, especially in terms of relocation. And this doesn't lock us in. There's still discussions to be had, but if we don't, as I understand the timelines, move forward today, we have a serious risk of not being eligible for the funding for the project for this cycle, and it could push it out another year or two. And every time you push it out, it becomes more competitive. We don't know what the funding is going to be, and yet this bridge deteriorates day by day by day on it. And so I think we need to take the general view that it is a public safety issue. We know it is, and both us and the property owner have a responsibility to fix it. And so, and that's what this process is ultimately going towards, so I'll be supportive of moving forward today. And then the continuing conversations as expressed in slide 16, those going forward with the businesses that are there, and to continue to have a constructive dialogue with the property owners.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I will associate myself with the comments of our colleagues that have already spoken today. You know, the initiation of proceedings like this, a process like this, is the soberest of undertakings for me as someone who sits on this dais and undertakes public policy. But the fact remains that eminent domain exists as a policy, as a process, in the event that we are compelled by the public interest to undertake that action. And I think it's clear that this bridge and making it safe for the whole community is necessary. So I will be supporting this motion today, but I do want to reiterate how difficult this is, and what a truly terrible position that we are all in to have to take this action, and really to admonish our staff, as I know you will, to work closely, to collaborate to try to move forward in this process. I hear that that is your intention, and very much appreciate that that was made clear in the presentation. I too can make the findings on all 4 of these ways today. And again, just want to go on record acknowledging that I clearly, none of us want to be in this position today, but it really is a public safety issue, and it's in the public interest and necessary that we move forward to repair this bridge as expeditiously as possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Yeah, I don't want to do this. Eminent domain is something I'd hope to maybe never face as a council member. And some of these locations, I mean, Yellowbird is one of my favorite places, and what that brought to that area, Marty's Pizza. I mean, we're longtime residents, neighbors in that area, and it's sad, I have to say. But we can't unsee what we've seen, and having an unsound bridge is not something that we can own as the city and support, and having structures on top of there particularly that are well used by the public, it's not advisable. I do want us to work closely in collaboration. I understand that you're not putting forward the statement that that's a usable parcel, the part that's left over or not, but give you time to determine that. The bridge programs right now, there's so much in demand across the state because all of our bridges are failing at the same time. And it's pretty soon that we won't get bridge funding. And so if we have a project that can improve the creek safety through there, we know that we have climate change and flooding waters through there. But the fact that there's a hole in the bridge that we own, we just can't ignore that. So I don't think anybody here is happy about needing to move forward with this, and if there's any possible way to retain as much of the property as you can, that can be worked out. I'm not convinced that that portion for habitat restoration, I'd like that to be worked out, if that's truly necessary for the project or not. But I do need to support the findings in terms of having a bridge that is structurally unsound. So I'll be supporting the findings.
Okay, very good, thank you. Well, I think it's pretty clear that nobody up here takes this in a very cavalier moment, but it is a matter of public safety. It's not, we're proceeding to do this to build a shopping center or something about tax revenue. This is a public safety issue, and timing is of the essence. So with that, I think everybody's made their points. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
First by Friedman.
A second.
Second by Jordan. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
This is a motion by Councilmember Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Jordan for the staff recommendations.
And could you reference specifically making the findings, please?
For the staff recommendations, making the findings as listed on PowerPoint slide 4, that the public interest and necessity require the project, that the project is planned and located to be compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury, the properties to be acquired are necessary for the project, and the city has made the offer to the owners of record required by Government Code Section 7267.2.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Sneddon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is absent. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
And Mayor Rouse.
Aye. All right, very good. It carries. We are required to take a translator break. Matter of fact, we're a little bit over time, so we'll take a 10-minute break and be back at 20 of 5. Call this back to order. In case you weren't listening. Madam Clerk, would you read the item, please?
Certainly, this is item 14, continuation of 2023 Housing Element Update Goals.
Thank you. Mr. Gullett.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and City Council. We are back for this continued item. This was continued from April 28th, and this was a Planning Commission City Council hearing. Ms. Brooke gave a full presentation at that hearing that included an overview of requirements, process, and timeline. And the Planning Commission and City Council discussed draft goals. And with that, there was a continuation to this hearing for City Council to consider adopting goals. So the goals I'll present in the slide deck are those revised from the conversation with Planning Commission and City Council. And I just, as a reminder, wanted to cover the primary objectives of the housing element. So these are objectives set from the state for us. The first is to accommodate projected housing demand, facilitate housing production for all income levels and household types, including special needs populations, preserve existing affordable housing, improve safety, quality, and condition of existing housing, and promote fair housing choice for all. So the city's housing allocation is 8,001 net new units. So this is for the planning period 2022 to 2031. We're currently working with our consultant, identifying suitable sites for all of these units, and we're very confident we can with our current zoning regulations. And I'm including here an example of income levels for a 3-person household. At the bottom of the slide, it shows our updated county area median income, which is $100,100 per household. And this is for a 4-person household at 100% AMI. And how that translates for a 3-person household here is shown on this table. And what that would mean for rents, just for one example, a moderate unit would rent for about $2,200 for a 3-person moderate income household. And this is a timeline for our housing element with some milestones. On the left side, again, is the subject of today's hearing, establishing the goals. From there, we'll be working on the public draft, which we will release for review in July, then submit for review to State Department of Housing and Community Development in August, and they have 3 months to review it during that time. In the fall, we'll then revise the draft, provide the draft EIR for public review, and in January and February, hold hearings for Planning Commission and City Council. And in February 2023, provide the final document to State HCD. From today, our next steps are to be continue gathering and analyzing data, evaluate suitable sites for new housing and estimate build-out, including income levels, analyze constraints to housing production, draft policies and programs, and as we mentioned at the joint hearing, we are working with 2 planning commissioners. We did meet with them once already, and we're meeting with them on Friday as well to develop policies. Then we prepare the draft housing element and prepare the program EIR. And I just wanted to reiterate the relationship of the goals with policies and programs and provide an example of that before I get into the policies, or sorry, before I get into the revised goals. So again, goals are higher level aspirations for housing in the housing element, and then policies follow and provide the regulatory framework to achieve the goals. And they're also the standard for project review when the Planning Commission is making findings. And then programs are implementation measures with timeframes, rules, and measurable outcomes. So the example here, this is revised goal 1. So the current language is create new, healthy, safe, and energy-efficient housing that meets community needs. So a policy that could follow from that is provide zoning regulations that prioritize housing over hotel use. And then a program to implement that policy would be to review land use and zoning designations that allow hotels and adopt amendments to prioritize housing over hotel use in some areas. And the attachment to the council agenda report includes other examples of policies and programs that would follow those revised goals. So as Ms. Brooke stated at the joint hearing, the rules are different this time, and the city must be more actionable in its implementation programs. So with this, the city must identify a timeline to implement each program, who is responsible, the city's specific role, and specific measurable outcomes where we can identify them. And the city must also commit resources. And so I'll go through one by one of each of the goals, and that'll conclude my presentation and how we propose to amend them. So the first goal, create new housing, create new, healthy, safe, and energy-efficient housing that meets community goals. We're proposing no change to this. However, there was some discussion about living within resources. Some additional language to this that gets to that, perhaps adding some sustainability to this goal would help achieve living within resources, and we did have some discussion at the joint hearing on that. The second is prioritize affordable housing. So prioritize housing that is affordable to the city's workforce and vulnerable communities by use of deed restrictions or other measures over other types of development. And here we just add or other measures based on the conversation at the joint hearing. The third, provide housing assistance. Provide financial resources and supportive services for members of the community who need housing assistance, and we're proposing no change to this one. The fourth, promote housing stability. Implement tenant protection measures, promote full-time occupancy of existing housing, and discourage conversion of housing to other uses. So with this one, we added full-time before occupancy and existing before housing, and then clarified conversion from housing would be discouraged. The next, preserve housing. So maintain and improve the physical condition of existing housing at all affordability levels. We remove blight and deterioration that were in the previous version. The sixth is engage the community. Educate the community about housing issues, affordable housing opportunities, and available resources and programs. Previously, it said inform the community, and we just changed that first word to engage. The seventh, coordinate with regional partners. Coordinate with surrounding communities and regional agency partners to address regional housing issues, homelessness, and the jobs housing balance. And we added the regional agency partners. And the fourth one is new. It's fund affordable housing. Develop a permanent source of local funding to produce deed-restricted affordable housing. So staff is recommending that City Council consider and adopt revised 2023 housing element goals, and we are here for questions.
Questions from council? Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Just quickly, so to orient myself, when we think about these 8 goals, thank you. We're trying to create something broad, right? I mean, that's just to make sure that's what we're doing. We're not trying to get into the weeds on these. It's really just overarching statements that guide us as we move forward to developing programs and policies.
Mayor Rouse, that is correct.
Okay. Well then, with that in mind, I just have one specific question, and I'm not getting into comments. I just want to see if, in your mind, this is something that could be feasible. On goal 2, where we've added or other measures, we've got some feedback from public comment about not wanting to deprioritize deed restricted housing, which I think probably we all share that interest. I may have been the one to bring this up. My intent was simply to say, let's be as expansive as possible to think about things like prioritization of local workers and different things that are maybe sort of ancillary but very much related to affordable housing. Do you think that it would be acceptable in terms of the goals and what we're looking to do in this housing element if we changed "or" to "and"? So thereby, the thinking being deed restrictions are obviously necessary, that's key. We also, in addition to that, want to look at all of these other ancillary things. Could that work from a planning perspective?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Harmon, that would work from a planning perspective. I just wanted to say that we don't need to set these in stone today. We fully intend to look at other measures. If there are other measures we identify, we'll include those in the policy. So we could change some of this language in the future, but having "and" it would work from a planning perspective.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I have a question. It's a little, it kind of fits within these, but it's more for Mr. Colon because I want to ask the question now and then I'll address it in my comments. But it has to do with the discussion that came up at the previous meeting with the Planning Commission, and it had to deal with hotels. And I know there's a lot of concern in the community about the number of new hotels and what it's continuing to do to the jobs, housing imbalance, and that. So I wanted to ask if it was possible, because it came up, if we could do something like an interim zoning ordinance that holds the current regulations in place and on new hotels, so no new hotels for the duration of the adoption of the housing element. So it would be through like February of next year.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Friedman, you are describing the classic use of interim urgency zoning, that is to hold the status quo. In your question, the status quo being no new hotel development pending completion of a study, and that study in this case is your housing element. So the answer is yes. There are some process details I can get into if you'd like.
Okay, I think maybe during comments we could, should you want to get into those now or should we go into those in comments, Mr. Mayor?
All right, very good.
Did you want to have him get into those process details now or in comments later?
I want to see if anybody's got any more questions, but we can go to comments, but I do have some public speakers.
Okay, we'll do that in comments. Thank you.
All right, very good. I do have a couple of speaker slips. I don't see anybody that looks like the PICO people on these slips. Manly McNish and Pedro Tescado apparently are not here right now. Do we have some online commenters?
Mr. Mayor, we do have one online commenter.
Okay, very good. 2 minutes at the speakers.
Very good. And this is Zeke Sandoval. Zeke Sandoval, please go ahead. And you can unmute yourself and go ahead, Zeke.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, good evening, Santa Barbara City Council. This is Zeke Sandoval with PATH, People Assisting the Homeless. We are very excited to support this motion before you, and we really appreciate all of the great work from city staff to bring this forward. I know we spoke on this last month, and we're very pleased to speak on it again here. You know, we see it every day from our shelter on Cacique Street, right? High housing costs overwhelm a longtime resident's ability to pay their rent or even mortgage. Before they know it, they find themselves sleeping in a tent out on our sidewalks. And so we do everything we can to help our neighbors get back on their feet and find a stable housing solution that works for them. But we're really tightly limited because there's so few housing options. So we're very excited to see these 8 goals come before you. We're really grateful for the city staff incorporating the feedback from last month. At the end of the day, homes are what end homelessness. And so building more housing of all types both helps us move our unhoused neighbors out of homelessness and prevents more Santa Barbarans from losing their home in the first place. So goal number 8 in particular, I want to call out to consider a consistent source of revenue for affordable housing construction is an especially positive step forward. We've seen similar efforts produce tremendous benefits in regions of every size elsewhere in the state, and we're confident Santa Barbara would be the same. So PATH stands ready to assist the city in making all of these homelessness and housing goals real. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, very good. Are there further public commenters?
No, Mr. Mayor, no further commenters.
Okay, very good. We'll get it back to council, and Ms. Sneddon is ready to roll.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and thank you for meeting with us again and continuing this. So for goals, I'll just go with comments. For goals 3 through 8, I think those are all in good shape. And then I'd like to propose slight changes to Goal 1 and Goal 2. At Goal 1, I think there was consensus at Planning Commission and others, and to keep the language in there of within our resources. It's been in there since 1964. I don't see a reason to take it out now, and I think we did have agreement on that. So I'd like to propose we put that back in within our resources. And then on either Goal 1 or Goal 2, to add back in the language from the 2015, which was in there a couple different places, but now it's not in there anywhere, that with special emphasis on housing that meets the needs of extremely low, very low, low, moderate, middle income, and special needs households. That could go in either Goal 1 at the end or Goal 2 at the end, but I do think it needs to be listed out as opposed to just saying workforce, because I think workforce is open to interpretation. And I agree with if we need to change it to and other measures over other types of development, you could say by use of deed restrictions and other measures over other types of development with special emphasis on housing that meets the needs of, and then list those and be done with that. And then I'd also, for council's consideration, like to propose maybe an ad hoc of 2 council members, 2 planning commissioners who might be willing to be available for getting into the weeds and the deeper dive so that this can come back to council with successful support, if that's sounds like a good idea to the rest of council.
So we could potentially make that a separate motion at the end of the discussions. And I meant to say too, yes, we're remembering what Ms. Harmon said about these being also, we're doing broad comments, which you were perfect right on. So, Mr. Friedman, you're next.
Thank you. I'll just keep mine brief. I think this was really vetted at the last meeting. So I am supportive of the suggestion by Councilmember Harmon and Sneddon on the issue of changing the or to an and for deed restricted, and also supportive of living within our resources. I think it goes beyond just sustainability. It gets into water, solid waste, and other measures, so I'm supportive of that. Also am supportive of the comments that Councilmember Sneddon just made on listing out the different income levels for housing, and I think that would, it doesn't matter for me where, I don't have a preference, I say it doesn't matter, I have a preference, but Goal 2 seems to be where we could put that, but I'll leave that up to staff. And then I do want to go back to Mr. Kalan on the issue of hotels and what, for us to consider, how would we consider that, and what's the process?
Mr. Kalan.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Friedman. So the city has used the government code section that authorizes interim zoning a few times. And what you can't do with that section without special findings is prohibit multifamily housing. Here you're actually, Councilmember Friedman's actually proposing a measure that would be in service of protecting housing rather than opposing it. So it requires a 4/5 vote, and it can be done without notice, but in 45 days, you would need to extend it, and you can extend it only for another 10 months and 15 days for a total of a year. If we provide notice before your 4/5 vote, you can in one action extend it for 2 years. So either way would work. As far as today goes, the council would, and Ms. Bjork may be able to help with this, direct us to return for full deliberation on the question. After that deliberation, we'd come back with the urgency ordinance in short order. It's not a major drafting job. I would estimate 2 to 4 hours in collaboration with community development.
And so you think that was something we could come back potentially in June?
I'll defer to Ms. Bjork.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, I'm looking at your June calendar, and it's quite busy. We could potentially do a early special meeting or a very, very long meeting. But I can work with Mr. Klon to schedule that as early in June as we can, one way or another.
I think we don't have to pick the date today, maybe leave it to you to find when we can get it on there, but if my colleagues here are supportive of it, I'd like to have more information and have us have that full discussion at that time, so I'm supportive of that. So that's all I need for now.
If I might, it would be easier on us to get it done early in June, basically due to my schedule and Ms. Ostringer's schedule.
Okay, so I'd be supportive of moving that forward into June to have that discussion here at council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I would like to see something like that, have an actual scheduled hearing as opposed to doing something spontaneously. I think that's the way to go. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all those wordsmithing changes that you've heard from everybody. They make sense to me. And I think it's definitely time, I don't remember what I called it back then at the joint meeting, but it's definitely time to address hotels versus apartments. Well, so in my version, it would be where they're both in the same zoning allowance. If it's a hotel in a spot where you couldn't build multiple family residence, then I think the argument's moot unless you want to get in a brawl about changing the zoning, which I would almost participate in that too. But I think we're really talking about when a developer has a choice between a hotel and a set of apartments, they're choosing hotels because it pencils out better. Our job should be to make the apartments pencil out better rather than the hotels right now. So I'd support that too. And just because I've been there, the devil's in the details, because I'll save you quoting me. I'll just quote me, because I know there are projects in different stages of the pipeline, and I don't want to get into a kerfluffle over what constitutes the line of go forward or not go forward. So we clearly have to have that discussion as part of the ordinance.
And if I might, Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, I've given some thought to that. The city has had a pretty liberal policy of exempting projects, air quotes, in the pipeline. You don't have to do that. What I would advise, given the short time that you're looking at for the housing element, I would advise having this apply to any project that doesn't have a building permit, and I'd further advise that you administratively direct in the ordinance that no applications be accepted for hotel projects either. That would stop people from misunderstanding your ultimate intentions.
Yeah, but I guess I'd want to argue about the process between turning an application in and having a building permit, because somebody could have all their necessary approvals, but be going through plan check for a year and but they're ready to go. They're just slogging through plan check, and why would we penalize somebody who's gone that far and spent that much money? We used to have an imaginary line of, dare I say it, right, deemed complete, which moved every time you tried to ask the question on where that was. So what I'm looking for is some some kind of deemed complete line that makes sense.
Again, as I described it, the city has generally been more generous or liberal on that than you need to be legally. The case law that's still good is called Avco versus South Coast Regional Center from 1976. And in order to get a vested right without a development agreement, you have to have building permits obtained in good faith and substantial construction, which typically means foundations.
Okay.
So somebody in the process doesn't have a legal entitlement. You can give it to them, but
I
they
get
don't have an
that.
entitlement.
So what I'm hearing is you're telling me legally I can be a bully, but I'm telling you I don't want to be. I want to be more flexible than that. So we can argue that when your version of the ordinance comes back, but I'll just tell you that's where I would be right now on that.
And no argument, it's a matter of policy.
Okay. And then I'll just spend a moment here and talk about ad hoc committees. I would love to participate in another ad hoc committee. In fact, I think this would be great reality television, is me and Council Member Sneddon on a housing ad hoc committee. That would be like oil and water working it out together to be a wonderful salad dressing, right? So, but having said that, you know, I'm currently on two, and I'm less than impressed with both of those. So let me just rant a little bit about ad hoc committees. The reason I don't even like processes like this on goals that are general and big is because I really want to get to the programs and policies, or policies and programs, because those are what really matter and get you to where you want to go. And not having somebody with you along the way that's sitting up here frequently, if I may, with all compassion and respect, frequently ends up in a lot of work project being done without really it being sniffed by the decision makers, and then it gets to the decision makers and it's just out of whack a little bit. It's not just settling well. And so I like the idea of an ad hoc committee so that you kind of have some guiding angels along with you, along with that process along the way to bounce ideas off. They can bounce ideas off you. You end up basically, when you get back to council, you've already got half of the support you need for what gets done. My experience so far on ad hoc committees is that's not how it's been. It's been still more staff leading the work product, the ad hoc committee just getting to a point where they get delivered a work product and going, this isn't what we thought. We really wanted, in my view, an ad hoc committee where there's a series of small bite discussions back and forth rather than months between ad hoc committees where staff goes away and does a bunch of work and then comes back and throws it in front of somebody, and you still then want to get down in the weeds and discuss it all, and everybody then is bent out of shape because of the work that's gone into it, or the ad hoc committee members don't want to bend people out of shape by saying we got to work on this more. So that's kind of my view of an ad hoc committee when we're talking about an ad hoc committee, is that there you have council, if they would agree to that, is exhibiting that there's a great level of interest in the steps beyond the goals and what the policies and programs look like, and how we take our notes from the joint meeting or our issues with our accomplishments or lack of accomplishments in the past, and how we remedy those in our mind. And we work with staff on those collaboratively all along the way, rather than just giving staff a work product to bring back to an ad hoc committee. So I see a couple of you nodding. I hope that makes a little sense. It's not something I haven't talked about before, so you've heard this from me before. And I saw Ms. Sneddon nodding at me too, so I think if that makes sense to everybody here, I will certainly volunteer if somebody's looking for a second person.
Yeah, I think Ms. Sneddon's going to be coming up on the motion when we get done with this item, so. Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can be very brief too. I support all of the changes that were made by staff, as well as adding on number 1 within our resources. I like the addition of special emphasis in goal 2 specifically. I think it was said either one. I think goal 2, I don't know, I like the way it sounds better. And then the and instead of or, and then no other comments on the rest. I strongly support coming back for the interim zoning conversation. I think that was really wonderful suggestion by our colleague, and I very much look forward to seeing that. And I will quote Mr. Jordan, "The devil is in the details," but that will be an important conversation for us to have. So thank you for that. On the ad hoc committee, I would say, I guess I'm sort of, I'm agnostic maybe on it. I think for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not totally clear on what the purpose of this committee would be. Is it to talk about these goals or to talk about the things that come after these goals? Okay, then I think that's great. I also struggle a little bit because it is necessarily limited in number of people. And I think for one or two council members to have a very, very significant amount of input in the programs and policies that come out of this goal, and then the rest of us not really having the same number of bites at the apple, that's a little bit hard. And I think we could get to a point where maybe two people have the program that they want in place completely, yet we're still coming back to this table and digging in and completely redoing it because the other five of us feel similarly strongly about the programs and policies that we put in place. So I say that not to stop the ad hoc at all, but simply to say that maybe we want to think about something a little bigger. Maybe we need to be workshopping these issues or think about some alternative. And I just say that because I know there's already two people who want to be on it, and there's a third who would really want to be on that ad hoc too. And I think there's going to be a fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And I would hate to box anyone out of what is, frankly, probably a series of the most important policy discussions we will be having as a council in the next couple of years. So with that, I will support the direction that our colleagues go, but I had to just sort of temper that a little bit. Thank you.
Well, once again, when Ms. Sneddon mentioned this to me earlier, I like the idea between having two of us and two planning commissioners doing something like this and trying to flesh out a lot of these ideas, because what we have a track record of doing is having 7 opinions up here and circling the drain and never really coming up with anything we all agree on and having to move forward. So this is why it's great that we've had these broad goals that we can fill in and can be filled in. We still have to ratify everything at the end of the day. But rather than trying to create on the dais, I'd like to ratify from the dais. I'd like to have as much meat as possible that we can refine, we can parse, we can do whatever with. And I really think an ad hoc committee is going to be much more nimble as far as moving that forward, particularly with a hybrid of both PC and council. Mr. Klon, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. This is where I have to be giving you no answers. The Brown Act won't allow you to have an ad hoc that includes planning commissioners. It has to be composed solely of members of the city council to do it. And then there is a public policy issue that Ms. Bjork may want to address about whether this is the kind of thing that should be done in secret. So those are hard issues I don't want to impose.
So, okay, we go between that and the idea of having a workshop. I mean, those are obviously squishy details, but it just seems like if we're going to have to convene a Brown Act committee to have any discussion any time, sometimes it's going to be hard to come up with the findings with staff. So I don't know if there's a way to construct that or if it's just an impossible thing. Ms. Bjork?
Mayor Rouse, I think Councilmember Harmon did a very good job of articulating some of my concerns, which is that the charter is pretty specific that as a, you are to direct my work specifically as a body. And we have got a few ad hoc committees that are helping to provide input to staff rather than directing staff. This is one where I think you very quickly get on that slippery slope of directing staff. I think what part of what I heard from Councilmember Jordan is an interest in being brought along more through the process. And there may be a way to do that. Don't know how constructive or effective it will be, but at least we can try it in terms of frequent written reports to council, briefs to council. and those explaining what is going on in the work that's going on with the ad hoc committee, the PC ad hoc committee as an alternative. That way, all council is getting the same information, and you're not having to wait for a formal meeting. If you individually have questions of us, you can ask them, and we can clarify in that way, rather than having another group that is a subset of all of you, because I do think housing and planning generally is one of the most significant efforts that this council has to take on.
Ms. Sneddon?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate that. I'm looking at, I definitely want to see increments along the way before a public draft in July. I think that's been my concern all along, that it's going to come to us baked, and then we'll be hurry, hurry, hurry deadline, and then the time will have passed to give meaningful input to those policies. And I recognize that everybody wants to give input. So it was an attempt to be sort of more nimble in that, but I will just put, we can not have the ad hoc, which is fine too, but I'm going to put forward my request that I really don't want to come to July, see a public draft, and not have been part of a conversation. So whatever you recommend, whether it's workshopping or some other way, but I think it's going to be problematic to suddenly see a public draft that we haven't been part of building when so much of it is our policies for the next 10 years.
Ms. Brooke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Sneddon. I pulled up the timeline because, as you can see, as you mentioned, we need to release the public draft sometime in July in order to meet all the other deadlines. And so our intent was to work very closely with the two planning commissioners to try to get them coming along with the release of the public draft and a public hearing at the planning commission to receive comment. We had also built into the timeline, although currently not until the end of July, checking in with city council. It was going to be a status update and letting you know what we've heard so far. If your desire is for us to have more of discussion feedback loop with city council, we'd need to try to work that in towards the end of June, I think would be the very latest we could possibly do that.
Well, yeah, I think that's been my concern since we first saw this, is this compressed timeline and not knowing exactly when it is we're supposed to be giving meaningful input. So I'll leave it to the powers that be how that's structured, but I think we all would like to be at the table.
Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Brooke, you captured it exactly right. So it doesn't have to be an ad hoc committee. It just has to be smaller and more frequent bites at the discussion. And so I don't have a problem making meetings longer. I don't have a problem going to a special meeting. I don't have a problem getting updates long. I got to believe you have some stuff ready already because it's the middle of May, and July's coming up pretty quick. So it's just, it's certainly obvious to me that you can wait for staff in some cases to do 6 months of work project, and then there's a looming deadline 2 months later, and we see it before that month deadline, a month out, and there's some reluctance actually to really go after stuff that we really want to be changed because the whole 6 months has gone by and now this deadline's sitting there. It's almost like an intimidation of a timeline, and that's what I'm attempting to avoid with this. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if this item could be addressed with the housing crisis ad hoc that we've created, or do we think that these are two separate issues?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Gutierrez, I think the challenge there is it's the same issue regardless of which ad hoc committee it is. It's still a subset of this body that is not, the full body won't have the information of. So I don't know that provides an alternative. I think the thing we're really all struggling with is this compressed timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
All righty then, Ms. Sneddon.
Are we ready for a motion on the first part? Okay. I'd like to make a motion for adopting the revised 2023 housing element goals as presented, with the addition in Goal 1 of within our resources. And in Goal 2, it will read, prioritize housing that is affordable to the city's workforce and vulnerable communities by use of deed restrictions and other measures over other types of development, comma, with special emphasis on housing that meets the needs of extremely low, very low, low, moderate, middle income, and special needs.
Second.
Okay, first by Sneddon, second by Harmon. Further discussion on the motion. Does everybody understand the motion? Then with that, we'll take a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
This is a motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Harmon, for, as stated by Councilmember Sneddon at approximately 5:22 p.m., a motion for adopting the revised 2023 housing element goals as presented, with the additions as outlined by Ms. Sneddon.
All right, very good. Roll call
And a roll
vote,
call.
please.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is absent. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Yes.
And Mayor Rouse.
Aye. All right, very good. And I think the flavor of the day was that council would like to have more frequent, smaller bites at this apple so that we can stay on top of it as opposed to having a grand, let's conceive the whole thing. Mr. Friedman?
I'd like to make another motion regarding the hotels, so to bring back the first meeting of June, if possible, or early June, a discussion for the council to consider an interim zoning ordinance regarding hotels.
Motion by Friedman, second by Sneddon. Mr. Jordan, you have a comment to the motion?
And just to the motion makers, or to staff, I guess, would part of that bring back be recommendations on how to determine who and what spot in the pipeline can continue and who can't? Or do we need to specifically request
Mr.
that?
Collin?
No, we will discuss that, and this does require a 4/5 vote to pass.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the motion and a second on the table. Everybody understand the motion? Madam Clerk?
This is a motion by Councilmember Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Sneddon, to, at a meeting in early June, have a discussion for council to consider an interim zoning ordinance regarding hotels. Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan. Aye. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, not present. Councilmember Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Yes.
Mayor Rouse.
Aye. Very good. And thank you to staff. And we will move on to council member committee assignment reports. Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I attended the FSA speaker discussing youth mental health. Learned that 1 in 4 youth are living in poverty. Went to a COMB meeting where we're moving forward on the secured pipeline, and attended the Santa Barbara City College graduation. It was the first time back in person in 2 years, and that was a great celebration. Went on a walkabout with the Hands Across Montecito, looking at their homeless encampment responses. Spoke at the Riviera Association meeting, and we had a sustainability committee meeting with those recommendations that'll come forward on Friday with our budget.
Very good. Mr. Friedman?
Thank you. I attended the City Library Advisory Board meeting and the Sustainability as well as the countywide elected leaders forum on homelessness. And an item that came up was how we can, since we all use CityNet as a contractor, but there might be different priorities within each given jurisdiction between Montecito, the overall county, Goleta, and us, on try to aligning our goals and be more efficient with the use of CityNet as the populations migrate in between the different jurisdictions.
Very good. And I attended an executive meeting with the Santa Barbara County Association of Government Staff to talk about the 101 phases and whatnot. And at some point, when I find a time that's convenient with the city administrator, we'll try to get a presentation from them so we'll all understand exactly what's going on in town with our freeway, our bridges, and all the fun stuff. I participated in the mayor's Cycle Mania ride and got to ride with the 94-year-old Maria Cota, who gave me quite the history lesson as we drove around town. And went to the hospice event at the Fest Parker on Thursday, and all sorts of other fun stuff. That's enough for now. All right, very good. We have a closed session. Madam Clerk, would you read the item, please?
Certainly. Item 15, conference with city attorney, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, D1, as described in agenda item 15.
Very good, and we won't be reporting out after that, so we are adjourned.